Tick-tock time to rock. All the haters can shut your pie holes. Uh-oh, we're late again. 4 minutes, man. 4 minutes. You're late. I'm unsubscribing. Well, you're whining, so I'm blocking you. Does she always dress like that, or is that her YouTube persona? Yeah, I think she dresses like that so as not to be confused with other personas. You know what I mean? Basically, I mean, anyone who's doing anything can toss on a niqab and keep that identity separate from other identities. Anyway, how's everyone doing? Oh, you'll notice no one's here. Yeah, so Jai's been out of town for a while. He's gearing up to come back. I think he's coming back. I think he's coming back tomorrow or something like that. Anyway, yeah. So I could have waited. I could have waited to cover this with Jai and stuff, but yeah, he's busy getting ready to do a bit of traveling and stuff. I already had this clip pulled up from yesterday. We didn't get to it, but this was interesting. I listened to about 2/3 of it earlier, but hats off to Korra for bringing up topics like these. You don't see the Dawa guys wanting to debate whether the Quran is the word of Allah. They'll bring that up if they're talking to a person who has absolutely no clue what they're talking about, doesn't know about Islam, doesn't know about the history of the Quran. They'll bring up stuff like that. The scientific miracles and this and that. They'll bring that sort of thing up. Not to someone who knows the Dawa script. They won't bring that stuff up to us. And so hats off to Korra for covering multiple topics that most of the Dawa guys would stay away from. With that said, I'd say based on what I've seen, does kind of a crap job. Although even there, you can't say it's a worse job than other Dawa people do, because they really don't have a case on a lot of these issues. So she probably did about as well as she could with what's available to her, which is not a lot if you're in Dawa. Apparently someone saw that I'm all by my lonesome and got worried that the psychopath would feel lonely. Gotta have some friends. And so we got Issa.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, you see this debate yet?
I saw some of it. I was like, wow, this is intense.
Yeah, so in case anyone didn't in case anyone wasn't here yesterday, sometime earlier yesterday before we went live, they posted the other debate that they recorded that day. So they recorded Lady Logic. They recorded Lady Logic. So Christina, GodLogic's wife, and she debated 12 Muslim women. It was supposed to be 20, but 8 didn't show up because they weren't crazy about some of the issues that were going to be raised. But then Korra did the same thing on the same day. So then it was Korra versus 20 Christian women. The Christian women all showed up and so on. So yesterday we covered the Trinity versus absolute oneness portion of the debate, which, 5 to 7 minutes, they were actually on topic. Then Korra started going in other directions because she didn't like the way things were going. And in this one, Korra is debating whether the Quran is Allah's final revelation, the final revelation. So I'm always interested in this because, as I've said many times, if you go back 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, the Dawa guys had all kinds of arguments. And those arguments worked really well as long as no one had any clue what they were talking about. Once people started looking into these things, the arguments stopped working, and they started abandoning their arguments officially, like the Dawa guys. They don't use the perfect preservation argument anymore, again, unless they're talking to someone who doesn't know about the issue. Then they'll keep running with it. Scientific miracles, they abandoned that one again. unless they're talking to someone that they know doesn't know anything about what they're talking about, and then they'll bring up scientific miracles and so on. But officially, like we had Ali Dawa announcing that Muslims shouldn't use this argument anymore. It's been debunked. And so it's just a situation where all the arguments that they were using when I started learning about Islam and started interacting with these guys, all the arguments that they use, they don't use anymore. And so I always wonder, well, what arguments do you have anymore? What case do you have that anyone should believe in your book or your prophet? So, like, I'm legitimately interested. Once you've abandoned all your arguments from 15, 20 years ago, what do you now argue? What do you now argue? So we're going to check that out. Any thoughts on anything before we get started, Issa? I guess we could take these super chats here at the beginning.
I found it strange listening to Korra. I was like, she kind of comes off with that sort of, how do I say it, like Muslim apologist YouTuber type of thing where you learn a few bit pieces about Christianity. You're like, let me talk about these texts and let me, give arguments for these texts. But I don't think she really understands the text. I'm sorry, I have to keep summoning this over and over again, but I don't, and I hate to say this, but I think people do need to know this. Some people are born into a religion and they have a certain education and they can learn these kinds of things. But if you're not born into these spaces, you kind of need to get a certain kind of education on this. Like maybe take a religion class. Like for me, for example, when I was in undergrad, I took a Foundations of Christianity class, and it really helped me understand about Christianity. I read the entire New Testament, so I was like, okay. And I had a scholarly understanding of what the text said. We looked at other things, like we looked at the Nag Hammadi text. We look at all these other things, like kind of the space around Christianity. And I think it's super important to do that if you're going to talk about a subject, and you should try to get some kind of education. It doesn't have to be college per se, but you should get like a kind of education on this. And I think a lot of the time it's like what you said, and I can't believe it, but I think it's true. It's a script, because I see the same verses cited about the Bible. And I'm like, did you actually read the Bible, or did you go to a Google site and see these few verses and then you interpret them through an Islamic lens and then say, well, that's what it means? I'm like, no, that's your critique. That's your critique from your tradition. It's not it's an external critique, not an internal critique. You're not actually looking at these texts through the theology. And I don't think they understand, and I think that's the biggest problem. They don't understand Christian theology, and that they're just projecting Islamic theology onto Christian theology. And I think this is where the epic failure is.
Yeah, and that actually comes up when someone will raise an objection to what she's saying about the Quran, and then Korra will go, oh, but the Bible, and they're like, we don't have the same view. We don't have the same understanding of preservation and corruption and so on that you guys do. So stop applying your understanding of these issues to us, because we have different understandings. Yep, that's going to come up. Let's take these first couple super chats. We got Nordine, who says, even though it's a fiction, Saitama's smile illustrates demonic mind manipulation. It's a cartoon. Oh my goodness. This cartoon is illustrating demonic mind manipulation. He's smiling. He's smiling at the idea that someone very powerful could try to do something to him, and it's just amusing to him. As I said before, demons can manipulate emotions. Amusement is one of these. When it's projected onto something, it makes it feel funny. You see, the Saitama is doing demonic mind manipulation. And then Erdine continues, demons make use of that. They can make people find evil situations funny, just like Saitama found the giant's mistake funny. There are good reasons to think unregenerate people's emotions are influenced by demons, and especially by this little picture of Saitama. It's demonic mind manipulation. Thank you for your daily dose of that, Nordine. Josh says, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but Korra is a midwit. She says, in her defense, all women are midwits according to Sunni Hadith. They're all intellectually deficient. So she just be in line with what her prophet said. She says a lot of words without saying anything of substance. Well, we're about to find out. Maybe there will be all kinds of powerful substance. Thoughts on orthodoxy right now, David? Um, yeah, there's some pretty wild stuff in there. I knew some things, but I found out more. But I'm hearing their thoughts. Still seem like a bunch of issues, but we're gonna unpack it, everyone. We're gonna get to the bottom of this, not in the zut sense, but we're gonna get to the bottom of all of this. And yeah, tomorrow I'm having on Tony Costa. I think Tony's a Calvinist. There's some sort of distinction between Calvinist and Reformed. Like one is more strict than the other. I don't remember because I heard that years ago, but I think he's a Calvinist or Reformed or something like that. But yeah, Tony's going to be sharing his thoughts on Eastern Orthodoxy, and sometime after that, I messaged a couple of Orthodox priests about getting an Orthodox priest on with us to lay out the positive case. So if you guys are following on X, I asked that yesterday on X. I also have sent out a couple emails, but there are. See, my natural normal inclination is if I want to hear from someone, I check with YouTubers I know. So that's why I had Nick and Ben on. They're YouTubers and so on. But there are some people in the Eastern Orthodox camp who prefer talking to a priest about these issues because they want everything coming from a priest. So going to check on that. And what I'm interested in now, either more of a deep dive on some of the more controversial issues, like kind of breaking it down and breaking down the history and where they can trace this back to. Because we kind of did an overview with Nick and Ben. We went through Need God's 10. He had a video called something like 10 Reasons You Shouldn't Become Orthodox or something like that. Anyway, we went through those 10 reasons and we got the responses and so on. But that's not really doing a deep dive on some of the issues. So be interested in getting someone for a deep dive on those issues. But also, there are plenty of people who want to raise criticisms against Eastern Orthodoxy. And there are plenty of Eastern Orthodox Christians who are happy to respond to those criticisms. I still haven't seen, like, what is the positive case? Like, why should I view that church as the true church? I don't know. It's like, oh, here are the reasons. So trying to get a couple people on various times to explain that. So I have an idea about that. So we'll see. Ortho bros verbally attack you. Ortho wingers give you a hug and talk in nerd code. Yeah, it's weird. I prefer the attacks to all this hugging and nerds nonsense. Any last impressions of Andrew, your debate, and other takeaways and learnings? No. By the way, there's no last impressions. This will be going on for a while. I am good at getting people to become obsessed with bothering me and stuff like that. And you'll see, guys. 20v1, where are the other 10 people? Oh, yeah, since it's 10. It's technically 10. Because each one has half a brain. Korra, okay, perfect. Good job, boy. Yeah, which is worse? Good job. Listen, boy. And Korra's like, okay, perfect. That's interesting. Watched you on JP's channel. I appreciate you clarifying why you don't tend to take hard stances on non-essentials. We need more humility and authenticity like yours. Appreciate you, David. Yeah, I think it's a pretty natural, and I mentioned this there. I think it's a pretty natural tendency for just people to say, okay, here's the information available to me. It points in that direction, so I'm locking into that position. Whereas it's just always in my mind how much I don't know. So things have to be kind of like pointing massively in one direction for me to say, yep, I agree with that. And I will crush anyone who disagrees with me on these issues. But so many issues are just like, yeah. And they were trying to pin me down. They're like, do you defend sola scriptura? And they wanted me to defend all these sort of basic Protestant positions when, for years I've called myself a Protestant by default. I'm not interested in defending core tenets of Protestantism. I'm interested in defending core Bible teachings. But Protestants are generally more along the lines of, okay, we're defending the Bible here, not like later church tradition. But the reason I wouldn't go out and start defending like sola scriptura is I'm not ruling out the possibility of like authoritative tradition later on. I'm not. You just have to give me a case for that. Let me put it this way. Right now, I see some problems with Eastern Orthodoxy. If you told me right now, David would say Eastern Orthodoxy is false, I wouldn't do it, right? Why? I haven't really examined it yet. So why would I sit here saying it's false until I've actually gone through these things? So wasn't interested, but you got the Ortho Bros. They say we have to look into these things, and yeah, guys, I am not ashamed to say when I don't know enough about something, which is the vast majority of things. I don't know much about the vast majority of things, and of saying that I'm actually pretty skeptical of various positions, and I don't like adopting them. If they're on the scales, various hypotheses are on the scales. It's like, one side has to like almost drop to the floor, which the positions I normally defend, like Jesus' death by crucifixion, his resurrection, I think like when you're examining things, the evidence kind of drops to the floor on one side, and I can't take an alternative seriously. On tons of issues, even if I say I lean towards this position, I can still say, what? There's some other serious positions over here. So until I investigate those, I'm not gonna rule those out and just say this is the position, everything else is wrong. So anyway, but that's me. With that said, there are people who've studied all these things way more than I have, and they may be locked in. And are willing to proclaim the positions and defend them in debate and stuff like that. And so that's my position. You want someone like defending very specific doctrines and so on, find someone who is really interested in that stuff and has studied it really well. Let's see. God bless you. You noted some errors in Eastern Orthodoxy. Will you attack? I will. I'm giving them an opportunity. I'm giving them an opportunity to address these things. So I'm guessing I'll probably attack on some things eventually. I'm going to hear them out. I'm going to listen to the criticisms. We're going to have people on both sides of all these issues. Do want to get to the bottom of this, and I also want other people to get to the bottom of this. They're kind of dealing with the same situation, like you got the online Ortho Bros, debate me. Okay, well, we kind of all have to know what we're talking about. We've got this group that's going around like harassing people. So we kind of have to learn what we're talking about on this issue. And hey, if I'm learning, then other people who want to learn about this stuff can also learn about it. But it's a situation. I mean, theoretically, they could give me some knockdown case, and I'd be like, wow, you guys are right. That could happen. I'd be very surprised if that could happen, because if I see a bunch of problems and I'm not convinced of your responses to those problems, that makes it, you're going to have way more evidence that you have the correct position just overall to kind of outweigh all those issues. And so, and again, I just know I'm kind of skeptical with saying, nope, this is the correct position, and I reject all others. So I'd be pretty surprised, but I haven't seen their positive case, so I don't know it yet. But I will take a look into it. And if at the end of all this, if there are like serious gospel undermining issues, that's where I would kind of draw the line as far as where I would want to attack. If you have differences and they're okay, guess what? The Apostle Paul was okay with people having differences. He would say, hey, one person, eats whatever he wants. This guy doesn't eat meat. This guy esteems one day more important than all others. This guy esteems all days alike. He's talking about some very important issues like dietary restrictions and, holy days and stuff like that. And he's saying it's okay. It's okay to disagree about all this stuff. Don't let this stuff divide you up. Don't get divided up over disagreements. Whereas other people, no, we have to agree on everything or we're just separate. So, but yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in all of this. Noticed Orthodox proponents and Islam proponents both say we believe often. Cult, bat signaling, dog whistling, or just coincidence, or what. It kind of depends. It kind of depends. If you're asking for evidence and someone just says we believe, we believe, we believe, well, that's not answering the question. But normally it is relevant for a person to tell you what they believe. Depends on what you're asking for. You as a real one, David, always taking the heat off others and putting it on yourself. Yeah, I do that. It would be funny if Dawood became Catholic after investigating Orthodoxy. Oh, hey, goofy Sufi. That would be funny. That would be funny, right? Like if I start getting all the Protestants on here to address the Eastern Orthodox, but the Eastern Orthodox guys are going after Protestantism and both are just like reduced to rubble. And I'm just like, well, got to be Catholic now. Got to be Catholic. Me and Issa.
Or we might become Messianic Jews.
Yeah. Hey, what would that? Hey, how cool would that be? You being half, see, now I got a little difficulty because I'm only 2.7% Ashkenazi. You're half Jewish, so you might be good to go, man.
Oh no, Messianic Jews would take you too, bro. The Messianic church, the Messianic synagogue is very open. From what I know, they accept people who aren't 100%.
I'm 2.7% chosen, 100% dope. I should get a T-shirt that says that for no reason. Just from those two Eastern Orthodox you spoke to, I know it's wrong. Oh, I don't. I mean, again, before I say something, I have to say there are some issues like on that list of 10 things. There are some I'm like, not a big deal. Others I'm like, this. There are like 3 or 4 issues where it's like, this really doesn't sound like, this sounds significantly different from what the Bible says. So there are two ways to respond to that. If I say this really doesn't sound like what the Bible says, 2 ways to respond to that. One, you show I'm missing something and no, it actually is biblical. Or if you can just defend that your church is the authority and gets everything right, then, well, guess what? If your church gets everything right and that's their position, then they're just correct on all these interpretations. But we're going to see. The thing in Eastern Orthodox, why you guys talk, man, we're trying to watch a debate here, guys. Tomorrow we're literally talking about Eastern Orthodox stuff tomorrow and 1 or 2 other days later this week. Right now we're talking about Islam, guys, Islam. The thing an Eastern Orthodox would have to convince me of, did Jesus not finish the work? He claims to have done so, yet I'm told by Eastern Orthodox these other things must be done. Anyway, thanks for the content. Yeah, we're gonna have some good content. And I'm hoping, because there are lots of aggressive guys, but as you saw, guys, as you saw, we had me, a guy who was just being attacked by the Dyer and Wilson crew, and I pull up a video of a guy who's telling people here are 10 reasons to not become Eastern Orthodox. And we had 2 Eastern Orthodox guys on, one who considers himself one of the Ortho Bros, and we had a perfectly pleasant, respectful conversation. So I'm fine. If we dial, if a discussion gets heated. But I do think it's cool that we can have just nice, calm, respectful discussions. So let's see. Hey, David, it'd be nice to continue what you all were doing on JP's channel prior to Andrew Wilson's interruption. I really enjoyed that. Hi, Issa. God bless you both. By the way, Nabil's baptism was such a blessing to watch. Thank you. Yeah, I was, again, had no clue it existed. Found the tape. That was crazy. Just imagine you don't know something exists, and then what is this? Is this what it says on the tape? That's pretty crazy. As far as JP, I'm going to have JP on my channel later this week because he said he mainly focuses on the icon issue. The icon issue, which, according to Eastern Orthodoxy, we saw last time, is considered essential. It is an essential part of being a Christian. You are not even a Christian if you are not showing reverence to the icons and seeking intercession and stuff like that. So you're not even a Christian. So anyway, JP said he's focused on studying that issue. And I said, all right, I want to hear everything you have to say on it. That way I kind of know what all the criticisms are. And then we'll see. We'll see if people can give a pretty thorough defense of that. Let's see. Thanks for sharing the christening video. It was so timely. Issa, the Tawhidic Christian. Tawhidic Christian. That's funny. And I will confess my sins to God when I meet him. Well, you are told to confess your sins to one another, biblically. And that is a good idea. That's a good idea.
Do you know what's interesting? Like,
What's up?
from my experience with Orthodoxy, it's always been like this positive thing. Like, my mom went on a spiritual journey, and she was up in the French Alps in like a ecumenical space with Catholics and Orthodox, and it was just like a very peaceful, kind of beautiful, serene situation. So like when I keep hearing these people, I'm like, wow, this is a lot different than what I know about like Orthodoxy, you know. So it's, you know, it's, for her it was a very, very positive thing. So I guess for me, I'm like, oh, it's a very positive, you know, extension. And it's interesting to hear, like, she never told me about like this exceptionalism or anything like that. So, you know.
No, apart from the Orthobros and a couple guys I'm not sure are Orthobros, but they're on YouTube and stuff and sending some pretty rough messages. But yeah, apart from online interactions, I can't think of any negative interactions I've had with Eastern Orthodox people. They seem super cool. I was hanging out with an Eastern Orthodox priest last time I was out in California. AP said he wanted to meet me and talk about Nabil and stuff like that. So was talking to him, had some super cool, and he made me think about some things. And that was cool. Whereas the online Orthodox, they've never made me think of anything except like how repulsive their behavior is usually. So yeah, and I, guys, don't let some group on the internet affect your view of everyone in an entire group, because the internet, we kind of know the reasons. If there's not people say things on the internet that they wouldn't a million years say if the person were standing right in front of them. There's something about having a person with a face and eyes right in front of you that makes people, I don't know, just causes them to act a little more respectfully and so on. Whereas online becomes a cesspool. And what happens is you'll have like representatives of a group who become really toxic online, and other people in the group are like, we don't want any part of this. So they just kind of ignoring it, which means you end up like just left with the toxic group that's coming after you at all times. And all the sane people like, we're staying away from this mess. And then you look and you say, oh, that's what the whole denomination is like. And it's not at all. But that's separate from the question of whether the Eastern Orthodox Church is the true church, which is a claim of Eastern Orthodoxy. That's not just the Orthobros. That is a claim of Eastern Orthodoxy. All right, a couple more came up. Given psychopathy, what spiritual states have you experienced? Is your faith based on some kind of logic, or, the faith would be biblically, like biblical faith, because it gets mocked by the atheists. They're like, oh, faith is when you know something isn't true and you believe it anyway, and faith is what you have if you have no evidence. And no, I mean, Jesus' disciples had faith in Jesus. Did they have all kinds of reasons to believe in Jesus? Yes, they had tons of reasons to believe in Jesus. Biblically, faith is like a trust you have for the unknown based on what you know. So based on what you know about God, you can trust him for other things. You can trust him with your eternal destiny. You can trust him with the future. You can trust that he knows what he's doing and so on, because of what you already know about him. So that's kind of my faith. As far as spiritual states, there are definitely some changes. I mean, in my testimony video, I mentioned like how I think that was a massive spiritual change right there, and it was pretty instant. But there've been kind of things like that over the years, but nothing I'd really want to talk about. Let's see. God bless David and Issa. Hey, apostate of Allah. And here we have, what's the logically rigorous response excluding Aisha to a Muslim saying Islam's harm principle covers a prohibition on minor marriage when an individual one is assessed to be harmful, despite the Quran evidently allowing minor marriage in general? that would kind of be it. The harm principle is extremely vague. It's just don't harm others. Okay, you can't just apply that. I mean, you're killing apostates and so on. You're killing apostates. You can't say that just applies as some blanket rule. And you can't say it rules out minor marriage because Muhammad married a minor and the Quran allows minor marriage. And so that's why when you see Muslim scholars trying to apply it on the age of marriage, they're talking about like doing massive damage. It can't just be, oh, you're hurting this girl or something like that. That's pretty common if you're consummating a marriage with someone who's young. So it's pretty common that you're gonna, she's gonna be hurt. So it can't be something like that. In other words, the harm principle cannot mean don't hurt someone. So Muslim scholars have to interpret that in light of the Quran clearly allowing child marriage and Muhammad marrying a child. And so you'd say the situation would be the burden of proof is on the person who's trying to use this harm principle. If that person is saying, oh, yep, that means no minor marriage, okay, you can believe that. We can't believe that. We can't believe that that's what that hadith is declaring, because it would contradict the Quran and the hadith, and that's kind of a rule. If you're giving a hadith some interpretation, it can't contradict other even clearer hadiths, and it can't contradict the Quran. Let's see, Kingdom of Heaven movie, referral by the way, Baldwin. Oh, reference by the way, Baldwin. I've never seen that. I know Muslims liked it because when that came out, I was teaching English as a second language, and my students were all Muslims. And they were telling me about how much they love that movie. When you get to early church positions on Eastern Orthodox dogma, please talk with Dr. Michael Svigel, patristic scholar at Dallas Theological Seminary, for the Protestant response. He's on X. Yeah, happy to have him on, but we got a lot of good resources as far as people who are going to share their thoughts on stuff on both sides. So I like learning what a group believes and judging based on that. So excited to learn with you, D. Wood. You're the only apologist I have agreed with theologically 100% so far. Well, that's because I don't say much. I don't say a lot. So it's like, okay, these 5 things. Oh, we agree with you. All right, then we agree 100%. And we're good. But what to do? Low trust, high betray world, confess. But what to do? Low trust, high betray world, confess. Oh, if you're talking about confessing sins, yeah, don't just blurt stuff out like I do. Talk to someone you trust. Have a good friend that you trust and confess to that person, or to a religious leader in your church or something like that. But it's good to have a good friend that you can share things with. All right, Issa, you ready to get into this, man? Here we go, guys. This is Korra versus 20 Christians. Sure. It's actually like 20 Christians total, but with the 5 prompts, they have 4 Christians per prompt. So this is Korra versus 4 Christians that she didn't talk to before. So they divided them up. They divided them all up. All right, and the topic again is whether the Quran is Allah's final revelation, something along those lines. Let's check it out.
My next prompt is, the Quran is the final revelation of God. My name's Korra.
My name's Shanasa.
My name is Danielle Olivia.
I'm Marian.
My name is Belle.
All right, perfect. The reason why I picked this prompt is I mostly tried to pick prompts pertaining to Islam just so everybody can get their word in terms of why they disagree and so on and so forth. But the main reason why I believe that the Quran is the final revelation of God is because I believe that it contains content that only God could have known. You guys obviously agree, because I believe in 2 Peter it actually says...
Did you guys catch that? She said the main reason she believes that the Quran is the Word of God is that it contains information that only God could know. The main reason she believes that the Quran is the Word of God is that it contains information that only God could know. So this is like Dawa script from 15 years ago. I'm not aware of anything in the Quran that only God could know. Does anyone else? We got any Muslims watching? Muslims, what is there in the Quran that only God could know? Because all the examples that you've given over the years turn out to be complete nonsense. Oh, yeah. Hang on. All right, guys, let me ask. Guys, what awesome information does the Quran contain that only God could know, and therefore the source must be God? Let's see. We've got, here we go. The sun set in a muddy pool. That's right. How? That's in the Quran. That's Surah 18, verse 86. How could any mere human know that the sun sets in a muddy pool? What else we have? Equal letter spacing. The scientific argument for the Quran have been disproved. Ali Dawa, he said debunked. Let's see. We have a lol rib seed. Yeah, semen forms between the backbone and the ribs. Yeah, we have all of these awesome things. We have all the stars are missiles that Allah uses to shoot demons when they try to sneak into paradise. And so when you see a shooting star, it's because Allah hurled a star at a demon. Yeah, all of this amazing info. Here we have Yajuj and Majuj. Yeah, and the giant wall that's keeping back billions of them. There are billions of the hordes of Yajuj and Majuj trapped behind some wall right now. We have that women make spinal semen. No, the men make the spinal semen. The men have the spinal semen. The women have their own semen. And then the two semens combine. Yeah. Here we have Musa. Hey, Musa might actually be serious. Embryology. Yes.
I actually wanted to have a debate with Nadir on this. Is the Quran scientific? Remember we talked about this? Because I was like, you know what I was going to do? Is I was going to pull out a textbook and I was going to read the textbook and say, let's look at the textbook. Let's look at the Quran. Is the Quran science? Oh, wow. Cytology, embryology. Wow, this doesn't sound like the Quran at all. That's funny. You said the Quran is science, but the science textbook doesn't sound like the Quran. So, but I think that is so weird. I'm like, the Quran, we talked about this before. The Quran showcases like it's using the language of the people to talk to the people. It's using the understandings of the scientific understandings of that time. And a lot of it's probably influenced by, Galen and Aristotle. But, a lot of these Muslim apologists don't even know who Aristotle is. They don't know who Galen is. They've never studied Greek, philosophy or the Greek sciences. And they're like, whoa, this is so mind-boggling. How do they know this stuff? And I'm like, the Greeks knew this stuff, dude. The Greeks knew this stuff. Maybe you should start learning about Greek people, in the culture.
And we'll check out some of the other responses here. So we have Aleph, Lam, Mim, or whatever. Yep, that's some of the powerful things that. It's funny because in a way that is supposedly something that only Allah understands. Like human beings don't understand what that refers to, but Allah knows. Then we have flying on a winged donkey. Yeah, you do have the night journey in there. Apostate of Allah says sperm comes from between the ribs and backbone because that's why. That is true. The split moon. Yep. Child marriage is legal. That's right. The Quran knows the name of Jesus, but does not know any idea of the gospel. Not quite. I mean, the Quran calls him Issa, like my friend here calls him Issa, which wouldn't actually be the name Jesus transliterated into Arabic. And it's interesting reading Muslim scholars trying to address why his name is Issa and not Yasu, which would be his the Arabic version of his name. Then the seven
what I think it is?
sleepers. What's up?
I think it's from Jesus. I think it's from it's just like
That's one of them.
Evangelion. That's the position I would take, is that that makes the most sense. that it's a translation from a translation.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that would be much like the word evangelion, like so they have the Injil. The Injil, the word Injil is an Arabic transliteration of the Greek word evangelion that was transliterated into another language, either Syriac or Ethiopic, before it was transliterated into Arabic. So you can end up with something similar with Jesus, which is the Greek name of Jesus, going through some other language and then coming into Arabic, which would raise the question, why is the Quran using ultimately the Greek name for Jesus and the Greek name for the book that Jesus brought? So kind of wild stuff. Anyway, guys, those are some of the amazing things that the Quran contains that only God could know, but maybe we'll find some more. Maybe Korra's going to blow our minds with this. We'll find out.
That it contains content that only God could have known. You guys obviously agree, because I believe in 2 Peter it actually says explicitly that everything that is prophetic and spoken from a prophet is going to be initially from the Holy Spirit, right? That's written in 2 Peter. So if there is prophetic content and so on and so forth, according to you guys, it's going to be coming from God. There's a multitude of reasons why I also believe in this, but I want to hear your thoughts. Why don't you guys believe that the Quran is the final revelation of God?
I have to say, she's already got a problem here. She names prophetic content. So, I mean, there it sounds like predicting the future or something like that. Now, the problem there is, I don't know what she's going to refer to. I don't recall her. I only saw like the first 2/3 of this. So maybe towards the end, she's going to bring up something. I'm not aware of her showing what this prophetic content is. But as a Muslim, you have an issue that if you're using fulfilled prophecies or accurately predicting the future, I don't know where she's getting that from, but if she were able to show that Muhammad predicted the future, she's got a problem with saying that means his revelations are from God, because Muhammad said that the jinn can hear Allah's plans from the future and tell them to people, and they will get things right. People actually came, in the hadith, people actually came to Muhammad and said, Muhammad, what do we do with these guys who are predicting the future? And he says, yeah, just ignore them. And they say, but they're getting things right. And he says, yeah, that's because the jinn goes and he hears something Allah is saying, and then he goes and tells the soothsayer, but they combine it with a bunch of false things. So Muhammad himself believed that jinn can actually give you accurate information about the future. So in a weird way, that wouldn't, from an Islamic perspective, show that someone is a prophet. And yet Korra's making that her main defense of why people should believe that the Quran is the final revelation of Allah, completely undermining her prophet yet again.
Yeah, and I actually almost agree with you. So the miracle of the Quran.
Oh, I forgot about this. I think her name is Belle. I think her name is Belle. But Belle is just on fire here at the beginning. But check this out.
I want to hear your thoughts. Why don't you guys believe that the Quran is the final revelation of God?
Yeah, and I actually almost agree with you. So the miracle of the Quran is that Muhammad is like illiterate, but he gets all these things right? And I don't want to talk about the theology that he gets right or, morals that he gets right. I want to talk about the stories of the prophets, because the Quran is 6,000 plus verses, and it contains 1,100 verses about stories of the prophets. That's a whole 1/6 of the Quran, meaning if he gets any of those 1/6 of the Quran stories wrong, then he's not a prophet, right? And so, for example, in 12 verse 3, this is the chapter of Joseph, right? Allah is saying, before this, Muhammad, you didn't know anything about the story of Joseph. And then he reveals 98 verses in detail about Joseph. And he closes this chapter in verse 111 by saying, this is a confirmation of the previous scriptures and a detailed explanation.
Oh, hey, look, guys. Belle says, Belle Lou Apologetics, huh?
Oh, that's cute. She's an apologist.
Well, you can kind of tell by her argument here. Hey, Belle, you want to jump on? You can. I just clicked on her channel. Oh yeah. She's got videos over there. Oh, cool. Pretty cool. I don't know if you're busy. You can jump on. We can get you the get you. We can send you the link if you want to jump in, but I don't know if you're in a position where you want to jump in and stuff like that. But this is Bell's on fire here, so let's check this out, guys.
About Joseph, and he closes this chapter in verse 111 by saying this is a confirmation of the previous scriptures and a detailed explanation of all things. So it's a confirmation also in its details. And so I read the 98 verses, but then when I go and I search the Torah's version of Joseph, I find incredible amounts of differences, and they're irreconcilable too. Sometimes it's like, oh, maybe he was this age, and like, they're irreconcilable. And there's 944 differences just in those 98 verses of Joseph. And to me, that's really hard to reconcile. And the only reason Muhammad would be a true prophet revealing the correct Quran is that if the Quran's account of the prophets do match up, and you probably know verse 10, verse 94.
Yes, I do.
It says, if you're in doubt, go and read, or go and
ask those who read the scriptures before you.
And
Yes,
the context of that is right before it's stories of Moses, Noah, Moses, Aaron, Noah, other prophets, and then
Yes.
when the Israelites settling in the promised land, all these things, which are all stories you can find in the Old Testament. And so if the people in the 7th century are in doubt that Muhammad's revealing all these stories of the prophets, they have to go and read the previous scripture. And so when we go and look at not only the 7th century text, but the Dead Sea Scrolls from the 250s and the 1st century, and not even extra biblical texts, right? You have Philo of Alexandria. He's a Greek philosopher, no motive for religion. You have the Roman historian Josephus, and then you have the Codex Alexandrinus, Syriac Peshitta, in Syriac, Greek, Latin, all these different languages, all talking about the same story of Joseph way before Muhammad's time.
Okay.
Muhammad comes with 98 verses of complete contradictions.
Okay, perfect.
And then-
I want to touch
Okay,
on
go
that because
ahead,
it's interesting that you brought up specifically.
Wow, you guys catch that? So that was basically an extended example of applying the Islamic dilemma. She's pointing out that the Quran says if you're in doubt, and she points out in context, that's in the context of stories that the people of the book are supposed to be familiar with. And so the Quran says to Muhammad, hey, Muhammad, if you're in doubt as to what we have revealed to you, ask those who are reading the book before you. Now, you can interpret this in different ways. You can say, if Muhammad's in doubt that the Quran, just any of his revelations are the word of God, he can go to the people of the book. Or you can say it's only talking about the issue in context, which would be these stories. And so, hey, Muhammad, if you're in doubt about these stories that are being revealed to you right now, ask the people of the book. Well, what's the problem? Well, Bell just said it. You go to what the Quran says in these stories, and it doesn't line up. So Allah is saying, and by the way, this is his main argument for why the people of the book should believe in Muhammad. The Quran is confirming our scriptures, and it matches up with our scriptures. And so if you read what the Quran is saying, you're going to look at your revelations and say, wow, these are telling the exact same stories here. But that's not what we find. That's what the author of the Quran says you'll find, but it's not what we find. You read the stories in the Quran, you go to the stories in the Bible, and they'll very frequently have a lot of the same elements and so on, but they contain serious differences. And so it's not what the Quran says is going to happen. And so what do you do with that? Let's check with Korra here. And there's no way she's not ready for this. She knows Islamic dilemma is going to come up. She knows this issue is going to come up. So let's check out her response.
Story of Joseph way before Muhammad's time.
Okay.
Muhammad comes with 98 verses of complete contradictions.
Okay, perfect.
And then-
I want to touch
okay,
on
go
that because
ahead,
it's interesting that you brought up specifically Surah Yusuf for the story of Joseph. So we believe that the Quran is a confirmation of the previous scriptures. It's detailed everywhere. However, we believe that the Quran comes and it corrects aspects of the previous scriptures that were changed by the hands of man. For example, we have this
Why
in Surah
would these
Al-Ma'idah verse
specific things
15.
be
Wait, hold on.
changed?
You already get it, guys? I mean, this is it's just so weird to me, right?
It's a bad generic argument. And
Yeah.
I want to challenge I never even heard this argument from Islam ever until I've come into the realm of apologetics, Muslim apologetics. I was like, you actually think the Quran is correcting the Bible? If that's true, and you're saying it's correcting certain aspects, then the rest has to be true. What are you willing to engage with? The Quran.
Hang on. Need to flesh that out, Issa, because that's an issue people keep missing. So everyone pay attention to this. Issa keeps saying it. Everyone needs to understand the issue here, right? So if you just read the Quran just says it's confirming these previous scriptures and that these previous scriptures point to Muhammad as a prophet. So that's how it works in Islam, and that's supposedly how it works all along. So you have the scriptures before Jesus, but then when Jesus comes with the gospel, what does it say? It says that Jesus confirms the Torah between his hands, and the revelation that he brings, the gospel, also confirms the Torah, right? But also, the Torah and the gospel are supposedly predicting the arrival of Muhammad, and Muhammad comes and he confirms the Torah and the gospel. The idea is that all of these are confirming each other. They're confirming each other that they're from God. And so that's the position of the Quran. All these scriptures are in line with each other. We go to the previous scriptures and we find out they don't line up with Islam on all kinds of things. So what do we do here? Well, Muslims say, yes, the Quran is confirming these scriptures, but it's correcting them. So the Quran is supposedly correcting errors in the Bible. Just get your mind around that point right now, because this is what Korra is saying, that the Quran is confirming the scriptures, but it's correcting the errors in those scriptures. Get your mind around that. That's the position. The Quran is confirming these scriptures, but it's correcting the errors. Well, what's that mean? It means if the Quran doesn't correct something, that it just stands, right? In other words, if the Quran is correcting the previous scriptures, you've got all kinds of things in those scriptures that contradict the Quran. The Quran would have to correct all of them if it's correcting the previous scriptures. And so you'd have to assume if the Quran doesn't correct something, that it's still fine because it didn't correct it. It confirmed it, and then it corrected the things that were wrong, but the things that it didn't address or didn't respond to, well, those things would have to be good because it was confirming everything that it wasn't correcting. Guess what? You could take everything where the Quran says something different, take all those passages out of the Bible, you still have a ton of passages that are contradicting the Quran. If the Quran were to correct everything that disagrees with the Quran, it would have to be a really, really, really big, giant book. That's what Issa keeps telling us. But it's not. It's significantly smaller than the New Testament. So it's not touching the vast majority of the Bible. And so what do you do with that, Muslims? What do you do with that? It supposedly corrects the errors, and yet there's things that it never touches on that completely contradict Islam. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that? Anyway, just want to make sure people understand. Go ahead, Issa.
And that's exactly correct. And I would say the position that Muslims have to take is reconciliation. That's the only way. And it's hard. I'm not saying this is an easy project. I think many Muslim apologists are taking a fast food route, and it's a failure because what it does is it wins a battle, but it loses the war. Like if you think that you're winning this debate, you're going to lose, ultimately speaking, because exactly what you're saying. You can't win with this engagement. So the better position is like, how do I reconcile the Quran with these previous scriptures? It's an arduous task. It's difficult, but I think it's the only way for Muslim apologists. Or you can just say, well, I believe in these books, I just don't read them. Take some kind of position like that, but you can't take the position of, that it's correcting. That's nonsense. The Quran, and I keep telling people this, the Quran is of the poetic genre. It's like William Faulkner. It's like Shakespeare, meaning you're not going to get detailed narratives. It's not a clear text in that way. And that's why a lot of Muslims, when they define clarity under another definition. They don't define clear the way we understand clear. You know what I mean? Like when we understand, clear from here and there. So, yeah.
So Siri says, is Issa Muslim? Yes, Sufi Muslim. So not like most of the Muslims who are coming at you on the internet. The people coming at you would most of the time be like Sunni Muslims, lots of like Salafi types and so on. They tend to be more aggressive and so on. Occasionally Shias, but it's more rare. And then Sufis that you talk to are generally going to be a bit more laid back about a lot of these things. Not all Sufis historically. You had some pretty darn aggressive Sufis in the past, but
Correct.
not so much right now. Not so much right now. So you can have some good conversations with Sufis without things getting out of hand. And Ismaili Shias, you can usually have good, like even philosophical discussion with them and so on. But yeah, you got different kinds of Muslims out there, guys. You got different kinds of Muslims out there. So anyway, but the overall Muslim response is really like, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy because what they say, and by the way, I've said before, I agree with Issa on that. And I've said before, if for some reason I were to agree that Muhammad was a prophet, if some Muslim comes along and just gives me this knockdown argument that proves Muhammad is a true prophet, I couldn't then ignore what the Quran says about the previous scriptures. And so what would I do in that situation? I'd have to try to reconcile them somehow. I'd have to say, and you'd kind of have to go down the line. So the way you'd go down the line is, well, the Quran only has one verse that sounds like it's denying the crucifixion of Jesus. The Bible has tons of verses confirming Jesus died by crucifixion. So in that situation, you have to say, okay, we're going with crucifixion, and we're interpreting Surah 4, verse 157 in a way that doesn't deny Jesus' death by crucifixion. That's how you do it. You kind of have to go like issue by issue, harmonize what you can. Anything you can't harmonize, you just have to say, all right, I don't know, but I believe it's all revealed from God, and maybe only God knows how to reconcile these things, but something along those lines. But anyway, as far as their response, that the Quran is confirming these scriptures, but then correcting them, it's like, that doesn't work, because this is supposed to be for the people of the book. Hey, you people of the book. Do you want to know why you should believe in this book? It confirms your book. And you go and you say, no, it contradicts my book. And they say, aha, but it's correcting them. Okay, how does that prove that it's the word of God? It claimed to prove that it's the word of God by lining up with my book, but it doesn't line up with my book. And so, oh yeah, it's correcting it. Well, what's the argument for me then? That your book agrees with me on some things and disagrees with me on other things, and this is the proof? So when they say that, when they say, yes, the Quran says that the proof that the Quran is the word of God is that it's confirming these previous scriptures, but it's not really confirming these previous scriptures. When they say that the Quran is correcting, what they just did was they said Allah used as his main argument for why the Quran is the word of God, he used fallacious reasoning. He used circular reasoning. Why? So the only way I could say the Quran is the word of God based on this argument, according to how Korra and Dawa people respond, you have to say, okay, why should I believe this revelation is from God? Well, it's confirming your revelation. All right, I already think that's kind of a weird argument, but I can kind of see it. I can kind of see it if it's something like this. Hey, this guy out in the middle of nowhere in Arabia is telling the exact same stories that you guys have in your books. Now, you'd have to kind of rule out that he's getting them from somewhere else. But if this guy were to just walk out of a cave and he says, I got all these revelations, and they just line up with everything in the Bible, that might be kind of mind blowing there. That might make you think. But the way they respond, they turn the argument circular, because here's how it's supposed to work according to them. Why should we believe the Quran? Because the Quran is confirming your book. But the Quran contradicts my book on all these issues. Oh yeah, the Quran is rejecting those. So get rid of those. Why would I get rid of those? Because the Quran, why should I side with the Quran against my book? Because the Quran's the word of God. Okay, but it says I should believe it's the word of God because it's confirming my book. Is it confirming my book? No, it's just confirming the parts that agree with it. And Muslims don't understand the issue here. Muslims just think, if I came up to you and I said, hey, I got the Quran here, and I just want you to know I'm a prophet, and you should believe that I'm a prophet because I, Prophet David Wood, I confirm this book. Since I confirm your book, you should acknowledge that I'm a prophet. And then you ask me, okay, what are you teaching? And I say all kinds of things that contradict the Quran. And then you say, well, why should we believe you're a prophet when you're pointing to the Quran as confirmation, and yet you're contradicting it. I say, oh yeah, but I'm correcting all those things. So just assume I'm right, and therefore you should remove all the parts of the Quran that don't line up with what I'm saying, and then what's left will agree with what I'm saying. Guess what? That's true of any two books. You can take any two books, they'll agree on something. And you just say, okay, this book comes later, and so this book must be the word of God because it's confirming this book, but it contradicts this book. Yeah, but it's correcting all the errors in that book. And so anytime there's a disagreement, it's just correcting it. Okay, that's circular. You're assuming the Quran is the word of God, so you know which parts to take out. And then once you've taken out all the parts that don't agree with the Quran, oh, what's left? Shocker, it agrees with the Quran. That would happen with any two books. So if that's Allah's argument, if Allah's main argument for why we should believe in the Quran, if it's a circular argument that requires us to affirm the Quran at the beginning of the argument, and then the conclusion is that the Quran is the word of God, which we have to assume to even get it to work, don't ask me to take your religion seriously if the entire religion is based on circular reasoning. But that's what Korra just told us. Circular. It's circular.
And there's another problem too. It's just this idea that the Quran is not a clear text. This is a really important thing to hone in on.
It sure isn't.
And we have to just be honest with it. And that's why people are like, well, what does the scholar say? What does the exegesis say? You'll never hear any of these Muslims apologists say, well, I can read the Quran for what it is. Nadir and I were actually debating today by email, and he's like, 4:157 is so clear. I'm like, no, it's not. It is not clear at all.
That's right, it's not. Not even to Muslim commentators.
It's not clear. And then he was trying to debate me on, and he's like, well, Thessalonians, I had a conversation with him, and he misquoted what I said, but it's not really a shocking thing there. But I was like, he's like, well, it contradicts the Bible. And I'm like, dude, then that's the Islamic dilemma. Do you not understand that? If you're taking that position, then that means that the Quran is contradicting the Bible, which is a problem. And then I said, you could argue if you wanted to, I was saying, that it's the letters of Paul. And you could say, well, that's not the gospel. You could make that position if you wanted to. But then he tried to say, well, Thessalonians harmonizes with, I think he said the Gospel of Matthew. And I was like, okay, then that's fine. Then you hit the Islamic dilemma then, if that's what you want to do. I was trying to explain to him that's an out that you can take if you want to. I said, your problem is if you read the Quran literally. I don't think the Quran can be read literally. I don't think it's that. I always argue this. For example, take this one chapter in the Quran. It's called Surah Lahab, right? It's about the father of the flame. It says, perished are the two hands of Abu Lahab. He shall be perished, and
his wife,
and his wealth will not avail him. He shall roast on a fire having flame, and his wife will be the carrier of firewood, and around his neck is a palm fiber. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. That's not clear. That's why you have exegesis that people go to, and they're like, well, it's so clear. And I'm like, well, tell me what that means. Tell me who Abu Lahab is. What is perishing?
You don't know. You don't know from the Quran. You have no idea who this guy is, or what he did, or what his wife did, or why they're in such trouble, according to the Quran. You have no clue.
None. So you could say, well, it's some metaphorical thing. Maybe it's maybe we can be Abu Lahab. You could take some postmodernist way of looking at it. You could do that, right? You could do some kind of thing like that. But from the text itself, you have no idea. So it's so weird when people are like, it's so clear. It corrects. And I'm like, you're joking, right? Who are you fooling? You think the Quran corrects? I read the Surah Yusuf, and I read Bereshit or Genesis. I read both of those accounts back to back. And they are very different. They're vastly different as texts. When you read Surah Yusuf, it's like poetry. It's like this. It uses this refrain over and over again, where how poetry is, where it repeats the same sentence over and over again, right? And in the Bible, you have all the names of who these people are. You have the details of the lands they're in. You have a very detailed narrative from point A to point Z. That's what you see, right? And it's actually very kind of concise. It's a very concise narrative. And then when you read the Quran, it's like this very poetic kind of retelling of the story that is very, very vague. It doesn't give us any names. It doesn't even mention Benjamin, who's like a key figure in the narrative, right? By name. It doesn't mention the 12 tribes of Israel, which is kind of big. You know what I mean? That's a huge thing. So it's really the way that I would argue about it is the Quran is more like a Spark Notes version of like the Bible. And yes, there's going to be details that are slightly different, but that's the thing. It's more of a Spark Notes retelling. It's definitely not a correction. Like as a person who's been a teacher, like a special ed teacher, like when you correct something, there's like an effort that's in the correction. You explain why the problem went, like if I taught math, you explain what went wrong in the equation, right? And you said, okay, this is the steps you missed with this, right? That's a correction. There is no correction in the Quran. There's no method of correction. This is just a claim that's being argued. It's very problematic.
Yeah, and as Christopher from Defending a Lion has pointed out with his Talmudic dilemma, the Quranic versions of these stories usually line up really well with the Talmudic versions of the stories, not the Torah versions of the stories. But he shows that the various elements where you're like, that's not in the Torah, but they are in the Talmud, which is very interesting. Anyway, let's see where Korra goes with this.
Aspects of the previous scriptures that were changed by the hands of man. For example, we have this.
Let me back it up just to get her full response here.
Perfect.
Then,
I want to touch on that because
yeah.
it's interesting that you brought up specifically Surah Yusuf or the story of Joseph. So we believe that the Quran is a confirmation of the previous scriptures. It's detailed everywhere. However, we believe that the Quran comes and it corrects aspects.
You guys hear the "we believe" here? Because it just came up, pointing out with some of the orthobros, we believe this, we believe that, and so on. I have noticed this significantly more now. Like if we're talking to Muslims at a dawah booth, over and over again, it's we believe, we believe, we believe, not the Quran says, the Quran says, the Quran says. Because if you say, the Quran says the previous scriptures were coming, it's going to be, okay, chapter and verse. And so they just, we believe, we believe, we believe. And it's just interesting that so much of what they believe doesn't line up with what the Quran says. But anyway, just wanted to point that out. But yeah, I backed it up again because I don't want to interrupt her response here.
Story of Joseph. So we believe that the Quran is a confirmation of the previous scriptures. It's detailed everywhere. However, we believe that the Quran comes and it corrects aspects of the previous scriptures that were changed by the hands of man. For example, we have this in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 15. Wait, hold on. So in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5 verse 15, we have detailed in the tafsir, it says that the Quran comes to correct the...
Did you just hear what she did, everyone? Did you catch that? Listen to what she said. Catch what she says right here.
Is a confirmation of the previous scriptures. It's detailed everywhere. However, we believe that the Quran comes and it corrects aspects of the previous scriptures that were changed by the hands of man. For example, we have this in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 15. Wait, hold on. So in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5 verse 15, we have detailed in the tafsir, it says...
Did you catch it? We have in Surah 5 verse 15. Then what does she say? Does she say, here's what Surah 5 verse 15 says? Does she say, here's what Surah 5 verse 15 says? What does she say? See if you can catch it.
Scriptures that were changed by the hands of man. For example, we have this in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 15. Wait, hold on. So in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5 verse 15, we have detailed in the tafsir, it says...
You guys catch it? Very important, very important. Let's see who caught it. There we go. See that? Tafsir. Right? She doesn't say Surah 5 verse 15. She says Surah 5 verse 15, and we have detailed in the tafsir. That's their commentaries. Why? Because you can't just quote the Quran. The Quran doesn't say it. The Quran could be interpreted that way if that verse were in complete isolation and you didn't have the rest of what the Quran says or the rest of that particular chapter, Surah 5. But notice what she did. She said Surah 5 verse 15, and then she says in the tafsir. Meaning you go to a Muslim commentary that will tell you what you want. So check it out.
But we have this in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 15. Wait, hold on. So in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5 verse 15, we have detailed in the tafsir, it says that the Quran comes to correct the alterations and the changes and so on and so forth. And it's interesting that you brought up the story of Joseph because
they cut to Christina shaking her head. Yeah, so you catch that, guys? She says, in the tafsir, guess what? You can find a tafsir that will... The tafsir contradict each other left and right like it's a sport. But the method that you have now with Muslims, the Dawah guys are ultimate cherry pickers. Ultimate cherry pickers. They'll go through the entire Bible to find any verse that they can twist into something that agrees with them, and then reject everything else, even if it completely contradicts Islam. Then when that stops working, because people start, reading these verses in context and showing that can't possibly be what they mean, then they go to church fathers and they'll go through all the church fathers and find a church father who interpreted something that they can use to twist into agreeing with Islam. Or they'll go to some German scholar from the 1900s who said something that they can twist into something that agreed with them. What's amazing is they don't just do that with the Bible, they'll do that with the Quran. You take, okay, what does the Quran say about the previous scripture? So we have dozens of verses. They have a couple that they go to. They have a couple that they go to say, oh, the Quran's correcting the previous scriptures. And none of them work. None of them work if you actually read them in context. So what do they do there? They go to later Muslim commentators who were aware of the fact that the Quran doesn't line up with the Bible. And they'll quote them and what they said, even if it's not what Allah said. Even if it's not what Allah said. And why do they do that? Because they have to. They have to. If you just go with the Quran, if you just go with what the Quran says, that it confirms our scriptures. Not one word about the Quran correcting our scriptures, ever. The position of the Quran is that Jews and Christians misrepresent the text. They misunderstand the text. They misrepresent the text. They distort the text with our speech. We lie about it. We change things around and so on. That's not a criticism of the text. That's a criticism of us distorting the text with how we talk about it. But let's see.
And there's a larger problem too, that it gets compounded in what you're saying. And this is what we said to Junior and Rain. Also, it goes against, even, let's say most Muslims are Sunni, it goes against Sunni creed. And remember, I put it up on the screen for Junior. He's like, name one scholar. He kept saying that. And I'm like, it doesn't even matter. I don't have to name one scholar. This is the creed. You're supposed to believe in the books. And you're rejecting the books. So you're rejecting the Arkan al-Iman. You're rejecting the pillars of faith. That is one of the pillars of faith. You have to believe in books, not phantom books. You have to believe in Torah, Zabur, and Injil. That is what the creed is. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what to do with this. And I brought this up in our debate in our opening where I said, you're arguing that there's a global conspiracy. That's the position you're saying. It's like, kind of making a joke on Alex Jones, but, like the Bohemian Grove, that there's this evil cabal of Christians and Jews working together, twiddling their fingers and saying, we're going to corrupt the scriptures together and make this unified, corpus of corruption. That's what they're arguing. And I'm like, if your position is true, there should be many Bibles with many different kinds of narratives. No, the Bible's consistent. The books are consistent. And yes, like the Catholic Bible has Judith and, and a few other books, right? And you might have that. There's some extra books in the Catholic canon, but in general, it's so wild that, these folks are like, that's their argument. And it's so stupid. They think that Jews and Christians conspired together and did this global corruption. And there's no evidence of that. You would have to prove all of because it's not what I think the Christian apologist position is the accurate one, where it's like individuals did a corruption of interpretation and they made up their own books. That makes a lot more sense than saying the canon itself was corrupted. I don't even know how you could prove that. You know what I mean? You would have to prove a global conspiracy. And then that's one problem. Then you have another problem. The other problem is you're saying God is so weak that God can't protect God's words until the Quran. God just says, you know what? I'm omniscient. I'm omnipotent. I'm omnibenevolent. But guess what? I'm just going to let these people make these I'm going to deliver my holy words. And guess what? The humans are just going to corrupt them. But now at this certain point in the 7th century, I'm going to say we're going to protect the words now. How dumb and stupid is that? That's really dumb. I don't know what to do with that. That's dumb. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's pretty bad. But hey, let's go ahead and check out the verse, guys. Let's go ahead and check out the verse that she just brought up, which she didn't quote. She just tells us what a tafsir says, even though you can find tafsirs that say pretty much anything, but that allows you to cherry pick and get the one that you agree with and then declare that this is what the Quran is saying. All right, so Surah 5, verse 15, that's what she appeals to. Notice what it says. O followers of the book, indeed our apostle has come to you, making clear to you much of what you concealed of the book. So he's saying the Jews and Christians are concealing things about the book. Much of what you concealed of the book and passing over much. Indeed, there has come to you light and a clear book from Allah. So Jews and Christians are concealing what's in the book. Hard to do. I mean, why would you need to conceal what's in the book if let me put it this way. If me concealing what's in the book is the problem, how's that a problem for the book? If the book is corrupted, I don't need to conceal it. I just need to say what the book says, and it would be the book that's the problem, not what I'm doing. The Quran criticizes Jews and Christians for what we're doing with the book. And if you look at Surah 3, verse 78, that's where it's most clear. It says that, how do we do this? How are we distorting the book? It says we distort the book with our speech, with our tongues. That's how we do it. That's how we're distorting the book. And as far as this is Surah 5, verse 15. Notice you could, again, I already mentioned, if this verse were completely in isolation, you had no idea what the rest of the Quran said, you could, if you wanted to, interpret concealed of the book as altering the book and hiding what it says by corrupting it or something like that. What would be the problem with that interpretation then? Well, how about the entire rest of the chapter? So guys, this is Surah 5. You get down to Surah 5, verse 43. That's one of the passages we quote most frequently. Surah 5, verse 43. That's where the Jews are told that they don't need to come to Muhammad because they have the Torah. And then a few verses later, 547, that's where Christians are told that they need to judge by the gospel. And the verse after that says that the Quran confirms the previous scriptures and is a guardian over them. How? By ordering Jews and Christians to stop concealing what's in there and to judge by them. And then you get to Surah 5, verse 68, which tells the people of the book, O people of the book, you have no ground to stand upon unless you stand fast by the Torah, the gospel, and all the revelation that has come to you from your Lord. Which means, if Allah is saying here in verse 15 that your books have been corrupted, don't trust them, they've been corrupted, the entire rest of the chapter makes no sense. Allah apparently forgot this for the rest of the chapter. Or he's ordering us to judge by books that he knows are corrupted. So that's that. If you want to go that way, you can. Allah just is insane. He doesn't know that if he says a book's corrupted, he shouldn't be telling people to judge by it for the rest of the chapter. But that's one possibility. The other possibility is that you should read verse 15 in light of the other things that the Quran clearly says. And so you'd read this as exactly the situation that arises, that's the background of Surah 5, verse 43, which is that Jews didn't want to judge by the Torah, and they were concealing what it said. They were concealing what it said because they didn't want to judge by it. And the Quran orders them to judge by it. So, complete nonsense for Korra, and we can only assume, though, that this was her best response, right? I mean, if she has a response to the Islamic dilemma, she's obviously going to lead out with her best one, and her best one was the tafsir on Surah 5, verse 15, even though it contradicts what the actual Quran says. Brilliant response, but that's what we have to do with the Islamic dilemma, guys. All right, let's go back to this.
In the tafsir, it says that the Quran comes to correct the alterations and the changes and so on and so forth. And it's interesting that you brought up the story of Joseph, because that's also an instance of the Quran correcting the Old Testament. So let me ask you, in the Old Testament where it talks about Joseph's story, is the sovereign in his time addressed as a pharaoh or a king in the Bible?
So you're talking about the anachronistic putting of Pharaoh's name, right? So the way you...
No. What I'm asking is, I'm just asking, is he addressed as a pharaoh or a king?
In the Torah?
Yes, in the Old Testament.
In the Old Testament, he is addressed as pharaoh because we don't believe that. Well, I don't know. Me personally, I believe Moses wrote the Torah, right? It was revealed to him, but I don't think that he compiled it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So I think it's okay that later on someone wrote in the word pharaoh. I know, like, it doesn't come until later. Do you know?
Wait. So if you believe that it's divinely, do you believe that the Torah is divinely inspired?
Yes.
Okay, so you believe that somebody can come in and add a word into the Torah and change it from king to pharaoh, and it can still be divinely inspired?
But doesn't someone add the word crucified into your book?
Hold on. But don't you agree that if something is...
Okay, a lot going on there, guys. So Korra is saying that the Quran is clearly correcting the Torah, even though it never claims to do so. It's clearly correcting because In the Bible, so the idea here, guys, is that the Bible calls the Egyptian ruler during the time of Joseph Pharaoh, when the term Pharaoh wasn't used until a little later, right? And so the Bible is getting that wrong. Now, how Belle just responded is she said she would have no problem with someone later on saying, let's call this guy Pharaoh, because that's what the rulers in Egypt were called. Here's the interesting thing, and then Korra saying, "Oh, so you believe that this could be corrupted?" I have no problem with Moses writing Pharaoh about a time before they used the word Pharaoh. Why? Because that was standard practice everywhere. Let me tell you what I mean. And you don't have to do much searching on this, guys. You can go anywhere to find this. Anywhere you can read about the use of the word Pharaoh. We'll check out this is Wikipedia, guys, to show how much research Korra would need to do to see this. So check this out. So this is the article on Pharaoh. See this? Pharaoh? All right, check this out. The Pharaoh was the monarch of ancient Egypt. The title came into use from the 18th dynasty onwards, so that's after the time of Joseph. The title came into use from the 18th dynasty onwards and was subsequently attributed to all the previous kings of Egypt. Did you catch that? It came into use from the 18th dynasty onwards and was subsequently attributed to all the previous kings of Egypt. In other words, once they started calling the rulers of Egypt Pharaoh, they referred to all the previous leaders as Pharaoh. That's how they referred to them. Even though they weren't called that during the time, when they're talking about them, they would just call them Pharaoh. And it continues, and even among scholars. So look at the last sentence right here that starts with although, right? So towards the end of that first paragraph, it says, although the title only came into use in the 18th dynasty during the New Kingdom, scholars today use it for all the rulers of Egypt from the first dynasty, 3150 BC, until the annexation of Egypt by the Roman Republic in 30 BCE. You catching this, guys? Everyone does this. It just became how you refer to an Egyptian ruler. So when the Bible is saying, oh yeah, the Egyptian ruler is Pharaoh, the Bible is doing exactly what everyone else does. It's using the term exactly the same way everyone else does. But apparently it's a huge error, and the Quran comes along to correct it. And as far as I recall from the rest of this conversation, this is the only example. This is the only example of Korra gives. Remember, her argument was the Quran contains information that no one could have known but God, and it gets it right. And this is her only example. The Bible uses the word Pharaoh, which is exactly what everyone else uses, which is exactly how everyone else uses it, including scholars right now. So weird, wild stuff.
And you know what?
Divine revelation, it can't be changed by...
What's that, Issa?
I would say it's also strange that I'm like, where's the commentary on Daniel, Elijah, Habakkuk, Obadiah, Jeremiah? Jeremiah and Isaiah are kind of critical prophets. Where's the commentary on Jeremiah and Isaiah? There should be some corrections on that stuff, right? There should be commentary on it. There's not. So the thing is, this narrative that these Muslim apologists are doing, it's not working. Because if you're going to make that assertion, we need a full analysis of all of this stuff, and we don't. I mean, knowing who the prophet Daniel is, Jeremiah, Isaiah, like it's kind of shocking that this is not, you're not gonna, because if I'm the Christian apologist, I would engage with that. I'm like, why don't you tell me about this? What does the Quran think about this? Does the Quran just accept everything that's stated here? Does it accept this history? Like, this is an issue because she really is not going to have a response. It's a generic, it's you know what I would call it? It's a platitude. She's using platitudes, and it sounds nice on the surface, but if you actually challenge the platitude, it's a house of cards. It's going to collapse. Her narrative can't actually hold structure. And this is what I feel ultimately. it goes down to what we talk about with the Islamic dilemma. It's like she's slapping herself. You know what I mean? And I saw this when Daniel Hakikachu was debating this rabbi, this Jewish rabbi, and he's attacking the Torah. And I'm like, dude, you're attacking your own holy scripture. Do you not understand that? It's like, stop slapping yourself. You keep, every time you attack these books, you're shooting yourself, you're slapping yourself, and you're making a mockery of yourself. And then you sit there and you're proud and you're smiling. But I'm like, you don't look good from this. You look really bad when you attack your own holy scriptures. Quran, I don't even get this. Like, the whole premise of what Islam is supposed to be is that Islam is this tradition that has like existed from the beginning of time all the way till now, right? Like the truth. You might not call it Islam, but it's like the haqq, the truth that has existed throughout time from the beginning to now. It's been carried through prophets. And what these people are saying is they're actually attacking that narrative of Islam. They're saying, yeah, prophets got these messages, but God allowed them to be corrupted. So this one final prophet could come and correct everything, even though there's not any corrections. Like, I don't know what to do with this. It's so mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling.
It is really, really wild. And I think you can modify what you just pointed out there. So you're pointing out you've got like the book of Daniel. So you mentioned Daniel and Isaiah, I think. But I mean, Daniel, that's where you have the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. He's a divine figure who is coming to the Ancient of Days. Apart from a doctrine like the Trinity, you've got polytheism there. You have two divine figures right there. So what's going on? Why wouldn't the Quran respond to that? Right? I know my camera just cut out. It's been doing this for a little while. I could fix it, but I'm about to switch to another camera anyway here in a couple weeks, so I'm just going to wait for it. You guys still hear me without my camera? Okay.
We hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just got to shut it down and restart it. But yeah, so the Quran here, they claim is correcting the previous scriptures. Okay, Daniel, right? There you've got two clearly divine figures. Why wouldn't the Quran, if the Quran wanted to correct the previous scriptures, why wouldn't it correct that? Or Isaiah. In Isaiah, I mean, you've got passages that are just like basically Trinitarian. People call the book of Isaiah the Gospel of John of the Old Testament because it's a bunch of the passages sound Trinitarian, and you've got the incarnation, and in Isaiah 53 you've got someone dying for the sins of others, and so why wouldn't the Quran correct these? Oh, because it's too busy correcting the use of the word Pharaoh, which is how everyone used it at the time. Why did it focus on something completely insignificant like that, which is just common, the standard usage, even among scholars today, that's common, that's the standard usage. And it didn't correct all the theology. Wouldn't Islam be way more concerned about the theology? Anyway, weird stuff. All right, let's take a couple super chats real quick before we see where Korra is going to go with this. Esmi Sagara says, lol, yup, basically you're a Protestant. Me too, lol. Just the audacity to claim EO is the true church. Yep, that is the definition. David, why Dawas lie so much? Insane. Yeah, it is. Only God knows my testicles are in my ribs. That is correct. For example, semen comes from the backbone. Only Allah could know this. Not even scientists have figured this out yet. Yep, scientists also haven't figured out that stars are missiles that Allah uses to shoot demons. Also, only God knows to rinse your nose for Satan. It's in the Hadith, though. Aleph Lam Mim, only Allah knows. Yeah, it does have all this information that only Allah knows. I'm from a land of muddy springs. Sun doesn't set there. Uh-oh. Well, that would be the decisive refutation. Rotorua, New Zealand, muddy hot springs. No hot sun. Well, how do you explain why it's so hot there? The Quran is like Shakespeare? Come on, Issa. That's a good point.
No, what I'm saying
we know
is,
what you mean. They're messing with you.
Okay.
Everyone knows what you mean. It's just like Romeo and Juliet. Become Christian, not the orthobro kind already, Issa. Yeah, just don't go the orthobro direction.
Oh, boy.
Would have been based if Bell said, I confirm what Korra is saying. I agree that the Quran is contradictory. I completely agree with you, Korra. We might need to start doing that, right? Like, say we agree with them, but contradict what they're saying so that maybe they understand the point finally. Has Issa made a video explaining his beliefs and how they differ from typical Sunni Shia beliefs? Yeah, you should make a video about that, Issa. That'd be a good video. And then make that video, put it on your channel, start a new channel, put that on the channel. And then whenever anyone asks, which they will, because they do every single show, you say, here's the link to my video. And then you got more people going to your channel.
Oh, that's fair.
That is. God bless you too. Thank you. Free to mit dear Dizzle. Thank you. Is it easier to teach special ed or Muslims, Issa?
That is so mean. That is such a mean.
That's pretty brutal, man.
That's a brutal comment. I think Muslims outside of these spaces are far more open, and I'm sure you've seen that in your own life. Like, it's really these Dawa spaces where you just see kind of the most nastiest type of Muslims. I think they're like anti-Dawa in a sense. Like they keep talking about Mossad and they're like Mossad agents. And I think that in a sense they seem like an opposition themselves. Like if, let's say, I'm like an agnostic, right? And I come up to one of those Dawa booths. I went to a Salafi booth once and it was so unappealing. It's like women need to stay in the house and, just like really, I wanted to tell you one thing about like the Orthobros, because I saw a debate with Daniel Hakikichu. I went to that. AP was there and we were hanging out. But the Orthobros were debating against Daniel Hakikichu from the Crucible, and Daniel was so proud and happy. He's like, we had this world where we had death penalty and people who have left religion were killed under the Byzantine Empire. Wasn't that great?
It was paradise on earth. It was Jenna on earth.
I was like, this is so evil. Like when I heard this, I'm like, this is evil. It has nothing to do with Jesus. I'm sorry. As a person who read, I'm like, no, Jesus does not condone this. That's your whatever kings who have power, and they're manipulating and using Jesus to do these evil things. That's my position on that, what those empires did. But he's like, isn't that good? And they were all kind of agreeing, like having this dystopic future where everybody's under like kind of this 1984 regime where they have absolute control and they will hurt you and destroy you if you don't do what they say and think like they think. And I'm like, dude, that sounds so like their paradise sounds like my hell. You know what I mean? They're like, and they're gleeful. Both of them were just like, yes, we're going to be mean and we're going to control women and we're going to have oppression. We're probably going to take away music and we're just going to make you live in this evil dystopic future. And isn't that good? Isn't that great? To make women so they can't have a job. And I'm like, so what happens when a woman goes to like, the OBGYN? Do you want it to be a man doing it or do you want another woman doing it? Like according to your conservative views, their brains don't even go that far. They're like, we don't want women to be educated. I'm like, I do. If I was married, I would like my wife to be educated. I would like her to know how to drive a car. Like if I get sick, I would like to have backup and help. You know what I mean? Like, but they were like in glee and joy in this regressive hellscape. And I'm listening. I'm like, I got to get out of here. Like, this is disgusting. It's so evil what they're saying. And they're like, yes, we want to kill people who leave religion. And I'm like, that's the complete opposite of what I believe. I'm like, I believe in the marketplace of ideas. I believe that we should be able to discuss and debate everything. I believe in freedom. These people believe in oppression, and I believe in freedom. I don't want their world. Their world sounds like my hell, So like when I was listening and they were just so in agreement, they're like, yes, we want to torture and we want to hurt. And I'm like, ugh. It was so gross. I wish you could have seen it. It was so disgusting and gross. And they were just so happy about it,
That's pretty powerful stuff there. Let's see. I say it's 4 o'clock. If you don't believe me, go check the clock. The clock says it's 4:30. You see, I'm correcting the clock. That is about what we're hearing right now. If the Quran is clear, why does it need a tafsir? Yeah, especially a tafsir that says something the Quran doesn't say, which is why they go to the tafsir. Issa, if the Quran is so unclear it can't be taken literally, what reason do you have to believe it and stay Muslim? Come join Team Jesus. Oh, hi, David.
Maybe I should make a video about like looking.
Oh, I thought you were about to say, yeah, maybe I should just become a Christian right now.
Yeah,
like,
maybe,
yes!
yeah, or maybe Messianic Jew or something like that. Yeah, but but yeah, I definitely think, yeah, I think I would maybe make a video about how other ways of looking at Islam. I think there are alternative ways of looking at Islam, but I definitely think the views of most of these da'is, it's like reprehensible. I can't get behind it. Like putting women in
Definitely
cages, marrying children, putting people in cages. I'm like, this is like, it's like diabolical. What they promote, it's just diabolical. You know,
it's pretty bad.
Like let's abuse children. Disgusting, evil.
Yep.
I'm passionate about that.
The Dawa Code. Yeah. Islam is Delulu. Rather simple answer. That does explain things. If the Quran corrects errors in the Bible, then why does the Quran get so much wrong? That is a good question, right? Should be getting everything right, and yet keeps getting it wrong. I saw on TikTok, Daniel did this 1 minute Muslim be Christian thing. I don't know how many haven't looked into it much. Yeah, we could check that out. Send me the link sometime. My 300-year-old church knows better than one that has been martyred for their faith for 2,000 years. Sure, bro. God bless David. Dr. Griftwood, do you want us to lose our salvation by bringing us knowledge of the Eastern Orthodox Church? Yep, we're just going to have to risk it, guys. Every orthobro I've encountered will tell me they want to turn America into an Orthodox theocratic monarchy, and I'm like, no way, absolute betrayal of my ancestors. Yeah, and the weird part about that, if they're talking about America, is since they don't view Christians outside of Eastern Orthodoxy as actual Christians, well, guess what? Like, Eastern Orthodoxy is like a very small... It's huge in other parts of the world. It's huge in other parts of the world. In America is not a whole lot of Eastern Orthodoxy. So you basically have a very, very tiny percent of the population who are Eastern Orthodox, who are the only Christians who are in the true church. So how are you orthobros planning on taking over and so on? It's like the Groypers saying they're going to take it over and make a Catholic theocracy here. It's like, how, right? One, Catholicism, well, it's bigger than Eastern Orthodoxy. Still a minority, but then like the Groypers are like this weird lunatic fringe portion of Catholics. And it's like, on what planet are you guys like taking over the most powerful nation the world has ever seen? How's that work? How does that work exactly?
And I think you have another difficulty too. It's like joining Orthodoxy and Catholicism requires a lot, and for certain people, it's too much to ask for someone. You're like asking someone to make this commitment that for a year they have to go and study and they have to learn, and that doesn't really represent, even if you're a person who believes like in the text. The text is like you see, the big JC having a conversation with who was it? It was one of the leaders of the Sanhedrin who was on the side of him, and he's like,
wait, you're talking about the Bible?
In the Bible, yeah.
Oh, okay. Who are you talking about? Nicodemus?
Nicodemus.
Okay.
I'm talking about Nicodemus, and he's like, you need to be born again. And he's like, well, how can I be born again? How do you can't?
So can I come out of my mother again? How's that work?
Exactly, because it's such a wild thing. Like, but he meant like a spiritual rebirth, and it was like a very powerful thing. And it wasn't like you need to take a whole year of lessons and go through this whole process to be reborn. And I'm not trying to cast any blame here, but if you're going to insult Jewish people, for being very strict and having rules, are you not doing the same thing too? Like, aren't you just making up rules too and just putting across and Greek and Russian and Latin, like, aren't you literally doing the same thing you're accusing Jewish people of? Like, it seems like the pot calling the kettle black, if you know what I mean. If you're saying that you're Pharisaic, like, you're kind of doing the same type of thing.
And you brought up, you mentioned that, like, Eastern Orthodoxy can be a bit hard, right? You got to even become part of the church. It's like this year or 2 year long process of even becoming a Christian and getting baptized. So it's this long process, which that's one of the issues, guys, that does not seem biblical at all. People would become Christians on the spot as soon as they believed, and they'd get baptized very, very quickly. So as far as I understood, it was, well, there's so many, like, heresies that developed over time and stuff that now you have to really make sure people are clear on their thinking. I don't know if other Eastern Orthodox Christians would add other responses to that, but it is kind of weird because I pointed out that you can understand the reasoning behind, hey, let's make sure you really understand before you're even a Christian what is required and what you're supposed to believe, and so this requires a bunch of time. Again, that's not what you see in the Bible, but you could understand, apart from that, why you'd want to make sure that people are taking this very seriously and they're in it for the long haul, not just come in and decide to convert one day and then change their mind 2 days later and it's not for me. Like, even with it's been I don't know if you've been following it, Issa, but it's been a huge issue over on X that there are lots of people are taking screenshots of Eastern Orthodox Church websites that'll say, like, $250 fee for a baptism, or $500 or something like this, or $1,000. And so, yeah, I don't believe you should be charging for baptisms and so on. But, my first thought was, okay, but yeah, it's a much bigger deal. It's not just like you're going in and you want to be baptized. It's this is sort of the final step of your conversion. And, you've been in this 1 to 2 years. So again, I don't think you should be charging for it, but I'm trying to think of, like, the rationale for it. But then I thought, like, well, I guess it would weed out some of the fakes, right? Be good to weed out some of the fakes. Be like, okay, I think I'll convert to this. Maybe it'll be fun. Maybe this will be cool. Maybe this will get me in good with my girlfriend or something like that. Oh, you're charging a bunch of money? Yeah, not for me. Not for me. You'd have to be serious. To do that. And I did hear from some. I mean, I don't know that this is true, but I saw this response. But some of the Eastern Orthodox people were pointing out that like, if you actually said, I cannot afford this fee or something like that, they said they're not gonna deny you baptism or something like that. They're gonna do it and just be kind of a general fee. But yeah, I don't know how it works. Does sound weird though. So anyway, that's kind of me. I try to think, okay, how would I make sense of this and how would I rationalize this, given that it doesn't sound like what you find in like the Book of Acts and so on. But just some interesting times ahead.
And that's actually what you do in Rabbinic Judaism. You do a mikvah, which is what baptism is. It is mikvah. It's the same thing. It's the same concept, So, it's just like the Hebrew word for that. But you do that when you become a part of Rabbinic Judaism, is you do a mikvah as being a part of becoming a part of converting to Judaism. So it's really funny. I'm like, how does an Orthodox Christian then critique a Rabbinic Jew? You can't really. I mean, you're doing the same process. You can't critique Pharisaic and Rabbinic Jewish practice because you're literally doing the same thing.
We have here, I missed yesterday's stream. Korra thinks Hebrews' anonymous author is a problem. She has to explain why Islam has a book with an anonymous author, Hebrews. That would be funny. I meant Daniel did this one Muslim versus Christian thing like we are watching right now. I haven't found the full video. I don't know what's in it, how long, or what topics. Yeah, I haven't seen that either. So, yeah, if you find that, let me know.
I can probably get it for you because that's the one I think I saw, and it was just it was so appalling. When he's like, yes, they were violent, and like, let's oppress people, and I was like, oh, that's sick. That's evil. Gotta go.
Emmanuel here says, I believe the Bible is nothing but a document reminding the Arabs the Bible is where the truth is. Wait, you said the Bible is nothing but a document?
It's a correction. He actually sent me a message. This is why he actually sent me a message.
He meant Quran, right?
He meant the Quran. That's
Okay,
what
yeah.
he said.
I could get that from the context, but it's good that he confirmed that because, I was assuming that was just typo. So I believe the Quran is nothing but a document reminding the Arabs the Bible is where the truth is. And the Quran does say that. It says confirming it in the Arabic language. Also, Surah 1643 says Allah sent inspiration to the prophets to write the Bible. What is you and Issa's thoughts on this? Yeah, that's if you check out my video, Why the Quran is Revealed in Arabic, I point out some of this stuff. That's what all the revelations given to, according to the Quran, the idea you get from the Quran is Allah sent prophets and revelations to every group of people in the world in every language, and the Arabs were just last. And that's why Muhammad's the seal of the prophets. Now everyone has their revelation. And so people are supposed to judge by the revelation that was revealed to their group in their language. And so the Quran is said to confirm the Torah in Arabic. So you had you had the Torah that was in Hebrew, and the Quran comes so that Arabs would know. All right. We ready to jump back into this, guys? Okay, we had two more. I'm ex-Orthodox. I was born in it. They preach another gospel by good works. Well, we are supposed to do good works, so we're going to have to see exactly. We got some of the initial responses, but that is one of the issues we're going to have to delve into a bit deeper, because Paul did give some warnings about some of this stuff. Is ortho remnants of John and Protestants of Paul? I don't know if I'd break it down that way, but I'd have to think about it a bit more. All right, here we go, guys. Back to Korra. Now we're going to see how she's responding and using this issue of Pharaoh. Let's see.
Word crucified into your book.
Hold on.
Oh, and by the way, you just heard one of the other Christian ladies. If you're going to talk about it's a problem using the word Pharaoh, anachronistically, even though that's how everyone uses it, and that's even how scholars use it. What do you do with the Quran talking about crucifixion before crucifixion had been invented? All kinds of examples you could go there. During the time of Moses, according to the Quran, you had a Samaritan. The Samaritans didn't even exist yet. They didn't exist as a group. They didn't exist until much later, many centuries later. And so you can point out things like that easily. But yeah, the idea is if you're going to really harp on the Pharaoh thing, then you got some other things. But anyway, I backed it up a little bit because you hear someone bring that up. I don't think they ever get back to that. But again, I didn't see the entire thing. Let's see.
And then add a word into...
What's that?
You have another problem. And it's like, if you're wanting to do these corrections, what about Ezra being, the son of God for the Jews, and the placement of the Trinity? If you're going to try to make explanations for this, then you have to then grant the same grace to the Bible and say, okay, well, the Bible has the same rights to do that too. When Junior said that against AP, that there was some community that believed Ezra was the son of God, I mean, it was ridiculous. And then people saying it's Metatron. I'm like, no. There are Jews. That is blasphemy. Like, if you read the Torah, that's the big problem, is you can't worship other gods. You know what I mean? Like, that's the battle of, like, Elijah versus the priests of Baal. This is the problem. God, Hashem is fighting against, Baal, in the narrative, and Baal fails, to show up, and basically they get destroyed. And I'm like, this, and you know why King Solomon gets in trouble? He gets in trouble because he worships other gods. You get what I mean? Like, that's a problem. And I'm like, do you know what the Torah actually says? Do you know the themes, the theology? Like, you don't know that. Like, and so if you're going to grant grace to the Quran, then you have to grant grace to the Bible. You cannot say the Quran is correcting it, because if you're going to say that, then you have to say the Quran is wrong on this. So it's like, you either grant grace to all these texts, or you can be tough, but then you fail too. You're going to fall right into the same trap you're trying to set for Christians. And I think these people are not diligent in their considerations. And I want to,
you could just say they're inconsistent and hypocrites. That's what I'd say.
I hear that. And I want to say one thing about the Orthodox too. The first time I really kind of saw Orthodox was in a movie that I really love. It's a really great romantic comedy.
John Wick.
It's called, yeah, that's a real great one. It's called My Big Fat Greek Wedding. There's like 3 of them now. But in it, the guy, and I know him from Northern Exposure, and he's also in God's Not Dead 3. He's a really great actor, John Corbett. But John Corbett is this vegetarian guy who's from like this kind of non-religious Christian family.
Oh yeah,
right?
the lamb.
Yeah. Yes.
I
And
remember that.
he has to go through this whole process. Yeah, he must love lamb. I'll make him lamb. And he's like, no, I'm vegetarian. I don't eat lamb.
No,
But
that was they're making all the meat, and she tells her family, she goes, no, he's vegetarian, and they go, no problem, we'll make lamb.
make lamb. Yeah, we'll make lamb. That's what it was. Yeah, that's it. Because he's vegetarian. Exactly. That was great. You got the line. And the point was he had to go through this whole process to become Orthodox. He's like, oh, I really like you, and we like each other. But she's like, the only way we can get married is he has to go through this extremely difficult process that ends with the baptism to marry her. So it's kind of heavy. It's a very heavy form of that. And Tom Hanks and his wife are in it because they're Orthodox too. So that's a cute little trivia of that movie.
Yeah, if you wanted a better example, there was an episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza starts liking this woman, but she's Latvian Orthodox and won't date anyone outside the Latvian Orthodox Church. So he goes into the Latvian Orthodox Church and says he wants to convert. They give him this giant stack of books and stuff like that that he has to read.
I gotta watch that.
He finds out that it's really it's a super long, difficult process of converting to Latvian Orthodox Church. But it's funny because they ask him, he doesn't want to say it's for a girl. So they say, what is interesting you about the Latvian Orthodox Church? And he starts going, well, the hats. I mean, you've got the hats, just, really pious looking hats and stuff. So he has to try and explain. But anyway, yeah, that's another example there. All right, so we got Korra here. Korra, what were people calling her? Korra the Distorter. Korra the Distorter. Let's see her distort some stuff.
Torah and change it from king to pharaoh, and it can
But
still be divinely
doesn't
inspired.
someone add the word crucified into your book?
Hold on, but don't you agree that if something is divine revelation, it can't be changed by the hands of man?
No.
So you believe?
We have different standards of how Scripture is revealed.
Okay, so you believe that something can be divine revelation and also simultaneously be corrupted? Because, and I do want to let you guys hear. So,
to be clear, this is where the differences come in. So, guys, she's saying. So what Belle pointed out was she would just think that someone could change the word like king or something like that to pharaoh, and she wouldn't have a problem with that. Why? Because someone later on, they understand the rulers of Egypt as pharaohs. Whereas me, I would just think it was always the word pharaoh because that's how people are using the word pharaoh. They just used it to refer to any ruler of Egypt. But here's the thing. So suppose it originally says one thing, and then someone comes along later in a manuscript and says, we call these guys pharaohs now, so let me just change this to pharaoh. That's generally not what a Christian would regard as corruption, right? That would be someone trying to like clarify for a later audience who maybe doesn't know, who would be more familiar with a word or something like that. We would regard like actual corruption as like corruption of doctrine and teaching and so on. Not something like that. Whereas from a Muslim perspective, nope, they will regard that as corruption. But now you're doomed. Now you're doomed because so much of the Quran is different and has changed. And I'm pretty sure she's going to bury herself with making some of these claims about the Quran, because based on what she's saying right now, already the Quran is in all kinds of trouble. But let's see.
So you believe?
We have different standards of how Scripture is revealed.
Okay, so you believe that something can be divine revelation and also simultaneously be corrupted? Because, and I do want to let you guys hear. So corruption of a text is defined as an addition, omission, or alteration done to said text by somebody that is.
Did you catch this? Wait. Oh no, she wasn't done yet. She's already cooked. She's already destroyed the Quran. The Quran is corrupted according to Korra. According to Korra, the Quran is corrupt based on her definition right here. She just doesn't know it, but watch.
Because, and I do want to let you guys hear. So corruption of a text is defined as an addition, omission, or alteration done to said text by somebody that is not the author.
Catch that? An addition, an omission or alteration by someone who is not the alter. Why is this relevant, guys? Well, remember when Uthman burns all the Qurans? Muslims believe that the Quran is revealed in 7 different ways, the 7 ahruf. Uthman saw some confusion and decided to burn a bunch of them. What's that mean? Omission. It means the Quran is revealed in a bunch of ways that were omitted by Uthman when he burned them. And remember, recently Muhammad Hijab said, when he was challenged about different versions of the Quran, what do you do with the different ahruf? We would say kirat. The ahruf are back then. What you have now are different kirat. But these contain different verses and sometimes actual contradictions. What do you do? Hijab says any version of the Quran you read, you're reading part of the Quran because, other versions of the Quran are other parts of the Quran. Well, guess what? That means that no Muslim can say he's read, let alone memorized, the entire Quran now. You don't have it now. Why? The Caliph Uthman ordered everyone to hand over the Qurans and burn them. And in doing so, he burned a bunch of different ways that the Quran was supposedly revealed, which means that according to Korra, the Quran was corrupted. It's not according to us. That's according to Korra and what her sources say about the Uthmanic recension.
So do you guys agree that a text can be corrupted and also simultaneously be from God?
What you're doing right now is you're equating the idea of particular versions or specific instances where someone changed a particular book that went through one portion of society, right? One particular, let's talk about the slave Bibles, right? As Black people, we know that there was a specific Bible given to African-American slaves where certain verses were removed that would have alerted them to the fact that chattel slavery was not of God, that God directly, hold on.
Wait, hold on.
God directly, hold on, because I'm going somewhere with this. God directly condemned the type of slavery that was being used or being, enacted on African-American slaves. That said, it did not affect the totality of scripture. As she mentioned, the Dead Sea Scrolls, when we look back at the earliest texts, we know what the Bible is supposed to say because we have very, very old copies. So when someone changes one book in one particular portion of the world, we can verify that, or we can juxtapose that against what other scriptures we have. So the problem with the Quran, of course, is we know that it has been burned, right?
I'm going to address that point.
Okay.
So the issue is, you're saying that maybe one person just added the word Pharaoh in there, but the issue is, even in the Dead Sea Scrolls it says Pharaoh. So it's clearly, according to your standard, original to the text that it says Pharaoh. So in Joseph's story, when this sovereign is addressed as Pharaoh, you're making the argument now that somebody added this in to make it more adaptable to the people in the time and so on and so forth. But it's original to the text that the sovereign in his time is called Pharaoh.
How is that a problem for them? Did you guys hear what she just said? She just said it's original to the text. In other words, she said it's not just one manuscript you find the word Pharaoh in and then all the others say something else. It's everywhere. And she says it's original to the text. Hey, Korra, who does the Quran say revealed that text? Because she just said it's original to the text, the word Pharaoh. Okay, so Allah revealed it as Pharaoh. If it's original to the text, then Allah revealed it as Pharaoh. So then Allah comes along later to correct his own error as to how he revealed it? Is that what you're saying, Korra? Allah's correcting his own mistake? Oopsie, I revealed it as the word Pharaoh. Oops. Not looking good. Not looking good.
Which is historically inaccurate according to Egyptologists, which is why when she mentioned the Surah of Yusuf, the Quran comes and corrects this. And
the Quran comes and corrects what Allah revealed. She said it's original to the text of the Torah, which Allah revealed according to the Quran. And she just said the error was in the original. Ouch.
He calls the leader in the time.
What's that?
1 second, too. I liked what the Christian sister was saying. I don't remember what her name was, but I agree with what she was saying. The point, and it's actually something that I brought up in our debate with Junior. I was like, you need to argue for a global corruption of the text. You can't just say, it's a singularity, because like the sister said, you can go and find another manuscript and it would have the correct narrative in it, correct? So it's so, and she brought up the argument of the enslaved Bible, and I'm like, you can find, and that was a corruption. That's a perfect example of a corruption where these people who are enslaving other human beings wanted to hide certain things, but you can refute the corruption with the true text. So that's an example of showcasing how Korra is wrong in her position. You know what I mean?
She's very wrong. And I don't know if Aaliyah came in a little late. She said, what's wrong with using Pharaoh, though? Nothing. Nothing. The only thing you can say is that during the time of Joseph, Pharaoh would have been called something else. But that doesn't change the fact that once they started using the word Pharaoh, they applied it to all rulers of Egypt from the first dynasty. And that's how scholars use it today. In other words, they'll refer to any leader, even before the term was used, as Pharaoh, because that's what you call the rulers of Egypt. And so the idea that everyone does this with the rulers of Egypt, but the Bible's wrong and mistaken for doing what is the standard usage, is just insane. And this is our only example I've seen so far. This is wild.
A king instead of a pharaoh, because the term pharaoh, although it did exist in the time of Joseph, it never denoted a ruler or a sovereign. It denoted the great house or the great temple. So it would have been incorrect for the Bible to address pharaoh.
However, let's talk about that, because
But remember, though, she said it's the original reading of the Torah was Pharaoh. She said it. Original reading of the Torah revealed by Allah. Allah got it wrong. Ouch. And so it wasn't corrupted later on. It was just wrong from the beginning, according to Korra. So this has nothing to do with the corruption of the text. She just thinks that the Torah was revealed wrong. Okay, we need to take that up with Allah.
Into semantics, right? We know that throughout the Bible, the Jews, or from the Torah, the Jews do not use the name Yahweh very often because they considered it too sacred to read aloud. So instead, they called the Lord. But that doesn't mean that they did not know who he was. So if we see that this particular writer is calling someone a pharaoh so that it is more palatable to the people that are going to be reading it in that region because they know of kings as pharaohs, then that's okay. It doesn't.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't understand what she was saying at first. But you take something like the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, right? In the original Hebrew, it's Yahweh, right? But Jews didn't like pronouncing that name because of the very harsh warning about taking the Lord's name in vain. They were just worried about saying it, and you might just be thinking about something else, or your mind may drift very briefly, and you would be taking the Lord's name in vain. So they would say Adonai instead, Adonai, which is like Lord, but it's like a regular word Lord, not a name. So she's pointing out that no, they don't have any problem doing this. They don't have any problem using a different word or name, and we don't think that changes we don't think that that's not corruption. That's not corruption. Things like that. We wouldn't consider that corruption. But Korra does, but of course she had to acknowledge that it's original to the text. In which case, she believes that Allah just revealed it wrong. That is weird.
Change from the message or the overall context of the book. But what happened with the Quran, and we know that we have to address this,
yes.
What happened with the Quran is that it was burned. You're aware of that. Uthman, you know this. You're a scholar.
Uthman, when he standardized the Quran, he burned everything apart from...
Exactly.
Apart from the manuscript of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Sure. So when we're standardizing something, it is very convenient to burn all other potential references so that we cannot possibly check if we still have the correct context of the text. Do you see where I'm getting with that?
Okay, perfect.
You can
but
say,
the issue is, let me address
Pharaoh, but you have no idea what your original Quran might have said.
Perfect. We actually do, because if you actually read the hadith that talks about the burning, he says that he burned everything.
But
I am comfortable with hadith. Yeah, I'm comfortable with every single authentic hadith.
What's up?
How does the hadith help this situation? The hadith are about the prophet stories, not about the companion stories. What is the hadith going to do for you in engaging this narrative? This is Muslims need to have humility.
I think they're pointing out that, hey, if you think that variants and so on are an issue, then what do you do with the third of the rightly guided caliphs burning all the manuscripts because there are differences? So what do you do?
I totally agree with. No, I agree with their. No, I understand their argument. I don't understand her counter argument. She's like, the hadith. The hadith are not going to help you here because the hadith are the sayings of the prophet. They have nothing to do with this burning. She's like, I'm going to bring up a hadith to help deal with this situation.
what she claims, and she's about to get burned up here. She's about to. I mean, not here, but I mean, I could make endless videos just like how she's destroying Islam every step of the way. What she's saying here is that the copy that was compiled during the reign of Abu Bakr, which was then when Abu Bakr died, it was given to Umar. Then Umar died, and it was given to Umar's daughter, the widow of Muhammad, Hafsa, and stayed with Hafsa. She's pointing out that one wasn't burned. Hafsa refused to turn it over, right? And so she's thinking, aha, so we have this. She didn't realize as soon as Hafsa died, they went to her house and got it and burned it. That's not helping you. You don't have the preserved mushaf of Hafsa. They burned it. Why were they waiting to burn it? If I recall correctly, Uthman orders everyone to hand over their Qurans so that he can burn them all. Hafsa doesn't do it. Then later they want it. She refuses to hand it over, and then she dies, and it goes to, I think her brother at that point. And then he hands it over to be burned. This was during the reign of Muawiyah, and he sends his deputy or whatever is in Medina, Marwan, a guy named Marwan. He sends Marwan to get this and burn it. Why? It all matches up perfectly, right? It says there are no variants, right? No. He says, go get that because we need to burn it. This is crazy because you see this over and over again. Later on, eventually, Muslims bring up the Mus'haf of Ibn Masud. And they say, hey, we've got the Quran of Ibn Masud. The Sunnis take it and burn it. Why is this relevant? Muhammad said, if you want to learn the Quran from anyone, learn it from Ibn Masud. And someone brings up the Quran of Ibn Masud, they say, burn that thing. Why? They know about the differences. They know about the differences, and they're obsessed with burning them to cover up all the differences. And then somehow Muslims in the 21st century, it's nope, just perfect preservation, no corruption. If there's no corruption, why are they burning things left and right to try and cover up the differences, Korra? Why are they doing that? But let's see. She's trying to.
I think. Good. I want to say I think you're right. There's a problem here when you start to academically study Islam. The whitewashing stuff disappears. So if you go to probably like an Islamic school, you're going to get a very whitewashed version. Everyone's agreeing. You're not going to learn about the battle between Aisha and Ali. You're not going to learn that at all. That's not a narrative you're going to learn. Mm-hmm. You're not going to learn about the burning of the Quran. You're just going to hear perfect preservation. You're going to hear that narrative. And I think this is just dishonest. You have to be honest with your tradition. You got to say, look, yeah, there's difficulties here. Yeah, the Quran was burned, and there's an issue with that. You can't claim perfect preservation when the perfect preservation is I'm going to destroy all my rivals. It's like, oh God, I have to bring a little small movie reference here, but it's like Dredd. I don't know if you know Judge Dredd, but they made a new Dredd movie in 2012.
Oh, that was one of the top 5 action movies of all time. I haven't actually seen the movie. I just saw a bunch of YouTube clips, but that thing was phenomenal, man.
There's the 2012 one, and then there's the 1995 one with Sylvester Stallone. But the Carl Urban one,
the earlier one. The earlier one was kind of like a comedy, but it
was very hammy.
Yeah, it was dumb. But the Carl Urban one, my goodness, that was one of the legendary. And matter of fact, I will never forgive viewers because it flopped at the box office. I was like, that was one of the great, and they would have instantly made a follow up to that if it hadn't flopped at the box office. And I have no clue how it flopped. It's one of the greatest action movies of all time. And again, I've only just seen a bunch of YouTube clips, but
it's spectacular. No, I just rewatched it on my trip, and it's such a spectacular movie. But in the movie, there's these gangs fighting for power in this tower that they're in, because it's like an escape from the tower because they're trapped in this tower. These two the two judges, and basically this kind of crime syndicate, like called the Mama Syndicate, comes in, and they wipe out the other like three
All the other
syndicates
gangs
that are there, and they become the only one syndicate. Yeah, obviously you're going to be the only one power there because you wiped out all your rivals. So yeah, of course you're going to have this one Mus'haf because all the other Mus'hafs have been wiped out.
Yeah, isn't that insane? Like, it's in their sources, guys. This is all in their sources. Oh, there's a ton of differences between all these different Qurans. Well, let's just burn them all and put out a standardized version. Hafsa still got one that she didn't hand over. Okay, wait until she dies and then grab it so we can burn it so people won't notice the differences. Oh, hey, now later on, people are bringing Ibn Masud's Quran over here. What do we do? Burn it. Burn that thing. Let's just keep burning all the evidence. Here's what's crazy. It's totally unnecessary. We wouldn't have a problem with textual variance or a copyist mistake. That happens, especially if you have a bunch of people who are trying to like memorize it, so they're hearing it and trying to memorize it, and then later on they're writing it down. Of course you're going to get textual variances and differences. So what? It's not an issue. It's not a problem.
It should be fine. I agree. I don't think there's any problem with
but you see you see the inclination. It's better to just burn all the evidence and pretend there's no differences than to actually acknowledge that there are differences. And here we are 14 centuries later, and you still got, nope, one Quran, nope, it's perfectly preserved. See, we burned everything. This is insane. All right, let's see what we got here.
Quran might have said.
Perfect. We actually do, because if you actually read the hadith that talks about the burning, he says that he burned everything.
But
I am comfortable with hadith. Yeah, I'm comfortable with every single authentic hadith.
About which
I'm a Sunni Muslim, so I accept every single authentic hadith. But let's go back, because you're quoting, hold on. So when you're quoting a hadith, you're going to take the entirety of the hadith. The hadith that you quoted about the burning, that is from a narration, and it specifies that all manuscripts were burned except for the manuscript of Hafsa that belonged to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, which means that we have an original text. So let me ask you guys this, because we're being...
Did you just hear that, guys? I don't know if she has no clue what she's talking about or that was lying. Anyway, so guys, when someone is completely wrong, which she was completely wrong. Either they're lying or they're clueless. They just don't know, right? So Bennett, giving her the benefit of the doubt, she doesn't know how wrong she was right there. She just said, according to the hadith, Uthman ordered everyone to hand over the Qurans, burn them all, but didn't burn the manuscript that was with Hafsa. And she says, therefore, what'd she say? We have an original, something like that. That was burned too. It was just burned after Hafsa died. You don't have that. She seems to think they have that. Let me back up and see exactly what she said. So guys, no, you don't have any manuscript that belonged to Hafsa. They waited until she died because she didn't want to hand it over. And as soon as she died, they went and got it and burned it so that people wouldn't see that it's different from the standardized Quran that they handed out. Korra here either doesn't know what she's talking about or she's lying, but she acts like they still have this. And that's how they know the Quran's been preserved. Let's back it up a little.
Manuscripts were burned except for the manuscript of Hafsa that belonged to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, which...
What? And did you hear that? And she says that's the manuscript that belonged to Muhammad. She has absolutely no clue what she's talking about, or she's just like compulsively lying. Guys, no, that wasn't a manuscript of Muhammad. She seems to think that. The manuscript that Hafsa had, that was the manuscript that was produced during the time of Abu Bakr, during the reign of Abu Bakr. And it was made specifically because people who had parts of the Quran memorized were dying in battle and they kept losing more and more of the Quran. And Abu Bakr said, we need to not lose anymore, so let's make a book out of it. Hey, instead of just trying to preserve this by memory, let's actually make a book. And that way, if a bunch of us die, we've still got a copy. And so this wasn't made to be passed around or copied or anything else. It was just, let's avoid losing any more of the Quran. So they put it in there and they just kept it. Abu Bakr just kept it in his house so they wouldn't lose anymore, right? Korra thinks that that's the manuscript of Muhammad, and she thinks Muslims still have this because it wasn't burned during the reign of Uthman. One, it wasn't the Mus'haf of Muhammad. it was from Abu Bakr, and 2, they do not have that it was burned too. She doesn't have any clue what she's talking about now. Let me back this up, because this is insanely stupid and wrong.
Quoting a hadith, you're going to take the entirety of the hadith. The hadith that you quoted about the burning, that is from a narration, and it specifies that all manuscripts were burned except for the manuscript of Hafsa that belonged to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, which means that we have an original text. So let me ask you guys this, because...
You should hear that? We have an original text. It belonged to Muhammad, and we have an original text. Wrong and wrong. False and false. You have no clue what you're talking about. Why are you speaking? Where'd you get that? Malik tell you that nonsense? All right. I backed it up a little. We'll see.
Entirety of the hadith. The hadith that you quoted about the burning, that is from a narration, and it specifies that all manuscripts were burned except for the manuscript of Hafsa that belonged to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, which means that we have an original text. So let me ask...
Let's see it, Korra. Let's see that manuscript that belonged to Muhammad. We want to see that thing.
Guys, this, because we're being consistent, and I feel like we're not really talking enough about the Quran, to be honest with you. I would like to tie it back, if that's all right. So we're talking because you brought up the topic of burning and not having originals. Do you guys have an original of the New Testament?
The oldest copies that we have of the New Testament are of the Gospels specifically.
Everyone catch that. So one, the topic is the Quran. The Quran is the final revelation of God. She lies and says they have an original. She lies. And then, oh, so we have an original. Do you have an original of the New Testament? In Islam, a comforting lie. We have an original. You don't have an original. No, you don't. And then she states it as fact. We've got an original. The one from Muhammad that wasn't burned. Total nonsense. Total idiotic nonsense. And now, do you guys have an original? Weird stuff.
Are in Ethiopia, written in Ge'ez, and they do confirm what is currently in the old or in the New Testament.
And what is that dated to?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay, so the first instance, because we have nothing from the first century of Jesus, the first instance that we get a manuscript of one of the New Testament books, we have one of John that's about this big, and it...
I wanted to comment on that. Does she think that's a good argument? Like, that's a really bad argument. If you're going to make that argument, that burns you. You're basically saying, well, we cannot know who Jesus is. Well, we can't know who he is. It's impossible to know who he is. Because you're going to say 600 years later, the Quran's going to tell us who he is? Like, it's like, I don't think these people really think their arguments out, because what they do is they're like weaponizing arguments. Like, I'm going to fight. I'm going to create this sword and cut with it. But I'm like, your sword is two-edged and you're cutting yourself when you're making the cut of the other. So it's a really bad argument. I don't even think she realizes that. I'm like, if you say that you don't know who Jesus is, well, then I guess we just can't know. And, God's words can't be preserved. That's what she's telling us.
And it's stupid for multiple reasons, right? So one, she already acted like they have an original. They don't. That's a complete lie. But then she acts like it's a problem for Christians that we don't have the original manuscript of John or the original manuscript of Matthew or Mark or something like that. Not understanding how this even works. So one, back then, first century, second century, this would have been written on papyrus, right? Papyrus doesn't last nearly as long as parchment, right? Parchment. So later on, they're writing on parchment. Parchment lasts a long time. So in the 4th century, they're writing on parchment. That's why you have entire manuscripts from the 4th century. That's when they're writing on something that lasts much longer. Papyrus, if you're writing on it and you're using it, like using it to read it in church and stuff like that, it's going to last about 10 years, and it's going to start falling apart, which means you need to keep making new copies, right? You need to keep copying it over and over again. So how textual criticism works was, guess what? These books of the Bible, they're spreading everywhere really quickly, right? So they're spreading across Southern Europe, they're spreading across Northern Africa, they're in the Middle East, right? Everyone's making copies. But then they're making copies of the New Testament that they have in their area. Well, what happens? Well, they start translating the Greek into other languages like Latin and Syriac. people are making commentaries on the text, and later on, scholars take the manuscripts. You have the different manuscript traditions. So you have the ones that are used in Europe. You have ones from the Middle East. You have manuscripts from Northern Africa. Guess what? Even though they're copies, they've been copying these for centuries. You can look and see if someone says, if someone gets a verse different from the manuscripts that are being copied in, let's say, Italy, and you can spot them. You can spot those things. So you have close to 6,000 manuscripts in Greek. You have more than that in Latin. You have tons in Syriac and other languages. You have the people who are writing commentaries and so on. You know what the text says. You know what the text says. There's no real confusion on what the New Testament is claiming. But she's insisting, nope, you have to have the original. Well, guess what? You just burned up the Quran then because you don't have it. And you had to lie to even claim that you had the original. You had to lie and say that you've got this manuscript from Muhammad that was preserved by Hafsa. Are you kidding me? This is dawah, guys. It's all complete nonsense.
Is a couple of verses from John. No, it's credit card sized. It's credit card sized. It's P52. Okay. Yeah, that's the first fragment that we get. So we don't have a complete copy until some people say like Codex Sinaiticus and so on and so forth, which is compiled, right? Some manuscripts are from earlier, some manuscripts are from later. But you made a point about not having originals and so on. So how can you have an issue with us having a standardization process that a lot of people, such as textual critics of the Bible, actually praise Islam for and say that Christianity does not have this, but rather Islam does? How can you have a problem with our standardization process when you don't even have a copy of the Bible from the 1st century and we have the entirety of the Quran from the 1st century Hijri? Who was?
She still thinks they have the original Quran. Okay, so guys, that was insanely stupid what she just said. She just said, we had a process of standardization. Many people praise us for this. You didn't have that. The problem is actually the opposite. You had a process of standardization, which means, and it was government controlled. You had the government ordering everyone to hand over their manuscripts and then issuing a standardized version. You say, people praise it. Who praises you for that? That's the government taking control of your book and deciding what's supposed to be in your book. And you had Ibn Masud. This is in Jami at-Tirmidhi. You had Ibn Masud. Muhammad said, if you want to learn the Quran from anyone, learn it from Ibn Masud. Ibn Masud ordered his followers, do not hand over your Qurans to these people. And he condemned and mocked the edition that was put out. What's that mean? Oh, they're all exactly the same? This is nonsense. So the people that Muhammad said were his top Quran reciters, they disagreed with the Quran that you have. They disagreed with the standardization. They disagreed with it. Get your minds around that, Korra. The people that your prophet said know the Quran best, they disagreed with the Quran you have now. And you're praising the standardization? They disagreed with the standardization. They said, don't go along with that standardization. Hide the Qurans that you have because we don't trust that standardization. You're saying, oh, yeah, everyone praises us for that. Muhammad's own companions, the top reciters of the Quran, didn't praise that. They thought it was evil and deceptive because they had different versions. They didn't even agree on the chapters. This is insane, guys.
Yeah.
So, my point to prove that the Quran is not the final word of God is by his internal testimony. It's clearly in the Bible that, first of all, like she said, it seemed like the Quran appealed to the Bible to prove its relevance. It's like the Quran used the Bible as a passport to get into the world of monotheism, and then after it kind of gaslight the Bible, like it changed the author. So if the Quran have to confirm a God,
that was actually funny. She said the Quran uses the previous scriptures to get into the door of monotheism, but after that it gaslights everything. That was funny. It just gaslights all. That's funny.
Like the Quran appealed to the Bible to prove its relevance. It's like the Quran used the Bible as a passport to get into the world of monotheism, and then after it kind of gaslight the Bible, like it changed the author. So if the Quran have to confirm a God that was already previously revealed, it have to be consistent. So first, I don't see the consistency. I see that I clearly see that the Quran is revealing something, but it's not revealing God. I think that the Quran is revealing something else. But not just that. I think it is internal testimony of the Quran. So who was the person that revealed the Quran? If we look at the Bible, the consistency, right? Because God is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning of the end, which means that he is consistent in his revelation, right? If we look at the way the angel appear into the prophet, is always making sure that they are not afraid. And when we look at how Muhammad have received the Quran, it sounds more like a demonic attack or possession other than a divine. And number two, I would say psychologically possible, he was illiterate, and someone that is illiterate who don't have a very good time retaining things. So for me, the Quran cannot reveal God because the way it was revealed to the prophet was not aligned with the way God revealed himself to any other.
All right, you made two great points that I actually want.
Wow, she just called them great points. Yeah.
That French accent is killer, man.
Yeah, that's killer. I disagreed with the second point. She said, yeah, I disagreed with the second point. She said, if you're illiterate, you're not going to be able to remember lots of things. This was an oral culture. They were actually very good at remembering things because they had to. And this has been pointed out many times. If you use your brain in certain ways, then your brain develops pathways and so on, neural pathways, and you get good at things. And so, the normal thing you point out is that when I was a kid, you had all of your friends and family members' phone numbers memorized. You knew your mom's phone number, your siblings' phone numbers, your grandma's phone number, your aunt's phone number, all your friends from class. You knew all their numbers. You just remember them. I can barely remember my own phone number now. Why? Well, we don't have to remember phone numbers anymore. You just click a button and so on. And so you kind of lose the ability if you're not using the ability. So that's one thing I would disagree. Her other point was good. She went in a completely different direction. But the other point she made was that, I mean, she was pointing out that if someone comes along later and claims to be following the same God as previous revelations, it needs to line up. It needs to line up, and you can't just say when it doesn't line up, oh, I was correcting it or something like that. So you can't do that. But she points out the way Muhammad receives his revelations, that doesn't even line up with what we see in the Bible. In the Bible, an angel shows up, an angel shows up. The angel's like, hey, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Why? Because if an angel shows up, you don't know if that angel's showing up for judgment and he's about to chop your head off. You don't know. So you'd be terrified if an angel shows up. So the angel shows up and, hey, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And she's saying that's very different from the way Muhammad receives his revelation, where he's like, recite, read this. He's like, I can't read. And he's choking him. Very, very different. So anyway, let me just back up just a little bit. Anyway, just wanted to point out, I disagree with the last part about someone being illiterate, not being able to memorize lots of things.
Attack or possession other than a divine. And number two, I would say psychologically possible, he was illiterate, and someone that is illiterate who don't have a very good time retaining things. So for me, the Quran cannot reveal God because the way it was revealed to the prophet was not aligned with the way God revealed himself to any other.
All right, you made two great points that I actually want to.
What's up?
So I think there's two arguments that she's making there.
Yeah.
She was saying that basically, and I think your point is correct. I think that you can memorize information, but I think what she's really trying to say, and I'm not going to speak for her, but I think because it's in the moment, but I think what she's really saying is, according to her theology, she's like, the way that these messages are transmitted, it can't be done this way. So the type of system, the whole system is not working. It doesn't transfer. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the position she's saying. I think when she was saying that, she's like, the whole thing is just, it's kind of askew. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Let's see Korra's response here.
I'm going to address the second one first, however. You said that somebody being illiterate means that they don't have that great of an ability to retain information.
Especially in the trauma that he described.
Okay, perfect. Hold on.
Oh,
so,
okay,
sorry, I just wanted to establish that. So, if you say that somebody being illiterate or unlearned or whatever it may be means that they have a lack of ability to process or retain information, are you aware that the Bible portrays John as illiterate and unlettered?
Well,
explicitly it says that. So, but you agree that John was still.
No, that's a misunderstanding. I mean, it could mean that, but by the way, it's also similar in the Muslim sources that what's used that what Muslims usually interpret as unlettered, it means like not officially educated, right? You haven't gone through the system to learn this stuff. Not that you necessarily can't read. You're just not educated. You haven't gone to school. So when you see the Jewish leaders, hey, where are these guys getting this stuff from? They're unlettered. It means you didn't go to rabbi school. You didn't go to rabbi school. Doesn't mean you can't read. They might not have been able to read, but that's not what that's saying. And it's been pointed out by people who don't think that Muhammad was completely illiterate that you don't have to read. You don't have to read the word ummi and think that it means illiterate. It can just mean like he didn't get an education. Let's see.
Capable of
I want to give an example too. So actually there is a signature. The Prophet of Islam actually has a signature. That's what they put on the ISIS flag, is they say that that's the signature from the Prophet of Islam, that his kind of writing of his name there. But also, like, I would give the example, my father, I'm a first generation student who went to college. My father, he knew multiple languages. He knew how to read and write, but he didn't go to formal school. You know what I mean? He learned like at home, but he never actually went to formal school ever. But he knew how to write and he knew multiple languages. So it is possible for that to happen. And I think that's a very valid thing to say, that you can be, like uneducated in a formal sense, but still have a degree of education,
All right.
and conveying information, right?
What are you referring to?
What am I?
Illiterate. I'm sorry. I'm just curious.
In the book of Acts. In the book of Acts, it says that he is unlearned.
That's
right?
different John.
Unlearned.
That's John
does
Mark.
not mean illiterate.
That's a different John.
No, oh wait, so is it the John that wrote the Gospel or the John that wrote Revelations? Because some people say it's the same and some people say it's
John Mark.
Johns.
Nobody says John Mark is the same John that wrote.
I think you ran away from the subject.
No,
I'm
wait,
talking about
hold
the
on.
revelation that Muhammad have.
Yeah, but you said
the revelation
that there was-
Muhammad have
Hold on.
sound
but
like
you
a
said-
demon
wait,
possession
hold on.
other than
the
an
reason
angel.
why you said that is because you said that somebody being illiterate means they have a lack of ability to retain information.
That's my
But
second point.
I'll address the
psychologically.
first point.
That's my
I'll
second
address the first point though, because
psychologically. I think you ran away from the question.
So the first point that you made is that we want to see consistency, not just with the revelation itself, so what the revelation reflects, but also the way that the revelation is revealed, right? And you mentioned that when angels come to people, whether it be in the Old Testament or the New Testament, it's the case that it's peaceful, and it's the case that even if, hypothetically speaking, they are afraid at first, they are comforted, right? Yes. So, and you said that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was not comforted, correct?
No, I didn't say that. I said that the way...
He was comforted by the angel, actually. We have an authentic narration in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya by Ibn
I can
Kathir.
answer if you want. I can tell.
Wait, hold on. I'm just going to answer that. But
Everyone check this out. Because Korra, it's another situation. She's either ignorant or she's lying. But just, I want everyone to follow the argument here, right? So I forget what the woman's name is, but the one with the awesome accent. Her first point was the way Muhammad receives the revelation, the way the angel approaches Muhammad is completely inconsistent with what we see in the Bible. In the Bible, the angels want to calm the person down and comfort the person, make sure the person knows, hey, I'm not here to take you out or pass judgment on you or anything like that. I'm here for another reason. And so they're pointing out, well, if an angel is coming to Muhammad to give him revelation, why doesn't he act like the angels act in the Bible? He comes and he's just terrorizing him. He's roughing him up, screaming at him to read and stuff like this, to where Muhammad goes and tries to hurl himself off a cliff. He was terrified and thought he was demon possessed. Why is it coming at Muhammad like that? Korra responds that, in fact, the angel did comfort Muhammad, just like we find in the Bible. And she says, and we have an authentic source in one of Ibn Kathir's works that shows that the angel did show up and comfort Muhammad. Everyone getting this? Why is this relevant? We'll check out the source, guys. We'll check out the source that she just cited. But wanted to make sure everyone gets this. Let's listen to it again. And then we'll hear Korra either. Well, she's going to say something false. What she says is false. It's just she's either ignorant, she thinks she's telling the truth, but she just doesn't know what she's talking about, or she's lying. Let's find out.
Old Testament or the New Testament, it's the case that it's peaceful, and it's the case that even if, hypothetically speaking, they are afraid at first, they are comforted, right? So, and you said that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was not comforted, correct?
No, I didn't say that. I said that the way
he was comforted by the angel, actually. We have an authentic narration in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya by Ibn Kathir.
I can answer if you want. I can tell.
Wait, hold on. I'm just going to answer that. But she said not by the angel. So in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya by Ibn Kathir, it's actually authentically reported.
You hear that? Everyone hear it. Authentically reported, right? Authentically reported, right?
Hold on. I'm just going to answer that. But she said not by the angel. So in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya by Ibn Kathir, it's actually authentically reported that in the incident of the cave, Jibreel says to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, do not fear, for I am Jibreel and you are the messenger of God. So that actually expounds on the hadith that we have in Sahih al-Bukhari, the one that does not say that, but we have it authentically narrated that not only does he comfort him, but he identifies himself as Gabriel.
And I would...
Everyone catch her response, right? She says, it expands upon what we have in Bukhari. In Bukhari, it's just like Gabriel's terrorizing him. Same thing in Ibn Ishaq. Gabriel's he's like terrifying him. Muhammad tries to hurl himself off a cliff. She says, but we have an authentic narration in Ibn Kathir's Al-Bidayah that shows that the angel did comfort Muhammad. All right. Here it is, guys. You guys ready? So you see that, and it continues on the previous page, but you have up at the top there on the left, Gabriel. All right, hang on. Let me get
Do you want me to
off,
read? I can read it
off the
if
screen.
you like.
So we have Gabriel. Then we have Waraka said to her, my niece, who can tell? Perhaps your companion is the very prophet whom the... So this is Khadijah talking to Waraka, right? So it's Khadijah talking to her cousin Waraka. Waraka said to her, my niece, who can tell? Perhaps your companion is the very prophet whom the people of the scripture are awaiting. Yeah, when were we awaiting this prophet? The one they find written about in the Torah and the gospel. Oh, I thought the Torah and the gospel were corrupted. How are we going to find him? By Allah, if he is indeed that man, and he proclaims his mission, while I am alive, I shall strive before Allah to obey his messenger and to aid him well, with patience until victory is granted. Shortly thereafter, Waraka passed away. Got this so far? So we got to get to the part where Gabriel comforts Muhammad, which is the part Korra says is authentic. Al-Zuhri said, thus Khadijah was the first person to believe in Allah and to affirm his messenger. Got it? All right. After presenting this account, got this, everyone? After presenting this account, Al-Hafiz al-Bayhaqi remarked, the splitting of his chest mentioned here may be a reference to what was done to him in his childhood, namely the splitting of his chest while he was with Halima, or it may be that it was split a second time and yet a third time when he was taken up to the heavens. Allah knows best. Al-Hafiz Ibn Asakir likewise relates in his biography of Waraka. This is the relevant part. This is the part that Korra just quoted. Al-Hafiz Ibn Asakir likewise relates in his biography of Waraka. Through his chain to Suleiman ibn Tarkhan al-Taymi, we have been informed that Allah, exalted is He, sent Muhammad as a messenger 50 years after the Kaaba was built. The first distinction with which He honored him in prophethood was a dream he repeatedly saw. He related it to his wife Khadijah bint Khuwaylid, who said, rejoice by Allah, Allah will deal with you only in goodness. One day, while he was in Hira, where he would withdraw from his people, Gabriel descended upon him and drew near. The messenger of Allah became extremely fearful, whereupon Gabriel placed his hand upon his chest and between his shoulders and said, O Allah, lighten his burden, expand his breast, and purify his heart. O Muhammad, rejoice. You are the prophet of this community. Recite. Got that? So, O Allah, lighten his burden. So what happens? What happens here, guys? What do we got here? See, Gabriel comforted him. You catching that, guys? Gabriel comforted him. So that's what she's pointing out. You see, authentic narration. Gabriel comforted him. So it is just like in the Bible. What's the problem? All right, go up to that. Go up to this paragraph. Let's see. See this part right here? See this here, guys? Al-Hafiz bin Asakar likewise relates in his biography of Waraka, and then you have that little number 4 there. See that 4? That's telling you there's a footnote. Got that? There's a note on where this is coming from. Got that, guys? There's a note on where this is coming from. In other words, what happens after this, it's telling you where it comes from. And it's got a note on where the rest of this story is coming from. And we go down here, because now we want to see what this is, right, guys? Don't we want to see what the footnote is? So scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. And here it is. Note 4, which it just sent us to. This is from Tariq ibn Asakar, volume 63, page 17. The report is weak. The report is weak. The report that Korra just said is authentic is actually weak. It's a weak narration. And so that's what I'm pointing out. Either Korra just lied right there, or she has no clue what she's talking about. But it's a weak narration that she just said is authentic because she needed it to respond to that point. And she was prepared for that. She was waiting for someone to bring that up. And she brings this source up, says it's authentic. It is not authentic. Either lying or, once again, completely ignorant. What has she said to give us the slightest indication that the Quran is the word of God? I haven't seen any so far.
I just want to chime in just to give my perspective on the prompt.
For sure. Go ahead.
My position is just very straightforward. Surah 6, 115 says that the words of Allah can never be altered. So I think it's convenient that if the Quran affirms that the revelation of the Torah and the Injils are revelation, they conveniently are altered, yet the Quran is not altered. Okay. Secondly, I wanted to just inquire do you know who discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls?
No, not
okay.
Sure.
Interesting story. So the person who actually discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls is a man named Muhammad. He was a shepherd. Yes, he was a shepherd who was searching for his lost goat. Now, if that's not the gospel, I don't know what is. Amen. He ended up finding.
That is awesome. A shepherd searching for his lost goat. I think it was actually the kid who was looking for him, and the kid thought he might have gone in a cave, and he threw something in there and heard a crunch and stuff, and he ran and got his dad. But so anyway, they're still looking around for this lost goat. Isn't that awesome? They're searching for the lost goat, and they find the Dead Sea Scrolls. That is funny.
No, not
okay.
Sure.
Interesting story. So the person who actually discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls is a man named Muhammad. He was a shepherd. Yes, he was a shepherd who was searching for his lost goat. Now, if that's not the gospel, I don't know what is. Amen. He ended up finding the Dead Sea Scrolls in a cave, and what he found dates back to 250 AD, which matches the modern Bibles that we have essentially exactly. So we have the first Muhammad who actually affirms the Torah and the Injils, such places like Surah 7, 157, I'm sure you know it,
yep.
The unlettered prophet, he's written about, yes. And then we have the second Muhammad that confirms what was actually found. A Muslim man actually finds the very text that his descendants are going to now call corrupted. And I feel like that is God's sense of humor all over that. So my perspective is that the Quran actually obviously affirms the previous scriptures, and the second Muhammad finds those previous scriptures for the world to see.
Perfect. So what's in
That's awesome, isn't it?
She's a brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
She's very eloquent. I've listened to Chinasa before. She's quite good at this.
I like these Christian ladies. They're awesome. Let's see.
Interesting is you touched upon Surah 6, verse 115, correct? Yes. Surah 6, verse 115 says that Allah's words cannot be changed. What's interesting is if you read that verse in context, verse 114 says that that's talking about the Quran.
Nope. Nope. You can interpret you can interpret 114 as referring to the Quran. Totally fine with that. You can't use that to say, therefore, verse 115 is only talking about the Quran, because it doesn't say no one can change the Quran. It says no one can change Allah's words. In other words, the reason you're supposed to be able to trust the Quran is that no one can change Allah's words. So why do we trust the Quran? So why do we trust the Quran here? Because no one can change Allah's words. Well, if you're interpreting no one can change Allah's words as, yeah, people have been changing Allah's words for centuries, the claim makes no sense. Allah's bragging about his amazing ability to preserve his word. That's why you can trust the Quran. What do Muslims say? No, every book that was revealed before Muhammad, it was all corrupted. Okay, well, Allah would then have a really, really bad track record if he could never preserve his previous revelations ever. Why would we trust the new one? It completely destroys the meaning of the Quran. But don't take my word for it, guys. Let's go ahead and check out the passage. Let's go ahead and check out the verse.
I wanted to say one other thing too. It was about, what was it? The thing before that Korra was mentioning. Never mind. We'll come back to it. There was something really important, but it was I forgot what it was, but it was something very central to what this thing was. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, so Christian woman brought up Surah 6, verse 115. No one can change Allah's words. And Korra says, no. You go back to the previous verse. That's only talking about the Quran. So here's the passage. We'll read it in context. Surah 6, 114 to 115. Verse 114, shall I then seek a judge other than Allah? And he it is who has revealed to you the book which is made plain. Doesn't seem very plain as far as I can tell. And those whom we have given the book know that it is revealed by your Lord with truth. Therefore you should not be of the disputers. Next verse. And the word of your Lord has been accomplished truly and justly. There is none who can change his words, and he is the hearing, the knowing. There is none who can change his words. So Korra says, yeah, no one can change his words in the Quran. The previous verse shows that it's just talking about the Quran. No, you can trust Allah when he tells you something because no one can change his words. If you say his words have been repeatedly changed by Jews, by Christians, and by every other group that ever had the word of Allah, they were all corrupted, this passage makes no sense. Allah's the last deity you should ever trust if all of his previous revelations were corrupted. You are destroying Islam, and there's no way you should trust the Quran if Allah has no ability to preserve his scriptures.
So
in fact, Anthony Rogers, my friend Anthony Rogers, I pointed this out before, but Anthony uses the example of a heart surgeon. He says, imagine you need heart surgery. So you start checking into heart surgeons and you find out there's this one heart surgeon who just brags that he's never lost a patient. This guy is the greatest heart surgeon ever. He's never lost a patient. And you're like, wow, this seems like a guy I could trust. And he's bragging, hey, come to me. I have a 100% success rate. That's how you know you can trust me. So then you do a little research and you find out every single patient this guy has ever had died on the operating room table while this guy's operating him on him. Would you trust him with your heart surgery if every single person he's ever operated on died? Wouldn't he be the last heart surgeon you would ever go to? If his track record was which he's claiming is 100%, was actually 0%, he's never been able to perform a successful heart surgery. Everyone dies. That's like what Muslims are telling us about Allah. He's bragging, no one can change my words. I have a 100% success rate. And they're like, no, you have a 0% success rate. All of your previous revelations have been corrupted. But he's making the point so that you can trust the Quran. No one can change my words. But wait a minute, everyone corrupted all of your previous revelations. Why would we suddenly trust you now? You have a 0% success rate of preserving your revelations. Why are we trusting your new one?
I remembered what I was going to say. It was about Waraka. I think that's an important point. The standard Sunni narrative is very clear about this. And it doesn't make sense that she would kind of go against that, because the position is that the Prophet of Islam engages with the angel Gabriel, right? And he gets really affected by that, and it's like what you said, that he's just so overwhelmed by what is going on that he feels like he needs to, because from, I think, the Islamic narrative, the standard Sunni Islamic narrative, it's the idea is that he's so, imbued with all this stuff that it's like terrifying, and he wants to, jump off the cliff because it's so intense. And then he sees, the angel Gabriel everywhere. But then what happens is he goes back to see Khadija. It's Khadija who comforts him. Khadija radiallahu anha. She comforts him and gets him in, this kind of peaceful space. And then she brings him to Waraka. That's what the narrative is. You know what I mean? So it's strange that she's saying that didn't happen. No, I mean, that's Khadijah's pivotal point, is that she comforts him during this kind of really intense moment, right?
We have, is that heart surgeon named Dr. Malik? Yep. Yeah, that's a side issue, guys. Korra here, if you're not familiar, Korra here is Malik's protege. So Malik, the guy who doxes us, threatens to kill us, have us killed, and so on. Guy who threatens to grape our wives and so on. That's the guy that Korra has hitched her wagon to. Interesting. Pretty creepy stuff. Let's take a couple super chats real quick. We've only got a few minutes left of this. Looks like about 4 or 5 minutes left, but let's see. Okay, brother D-Wood, hear me out. Korra is the new girl version of Junior. Thoughts? I guess Lil Kev's guidance hasn't been helping her any. Yep, that's what it sounds like. Issa, would you consider having a discussion? Issa, would you consider having a discussion or debate with Andrew Shamoon Maxing Wilson on the topic, what is a grifter?
That's funny. I've talked with Andrew Wilson quite a few times. It's interesting. It's a funny situation.
Now we got Than. Genesis uses king, and the Surah passages parallel the very section of Genesis where King of Egypt language is also present. Stop lying, Than. Without D. Wood's comments, this is painful to watch. Yeah, just lies from Korra. Waraka used the gospel to affirm Muhammad. That suggests the gospel wasn't considered corrupted in his time. How does one fix what's not corrupted? Was Muhammad confirmed with corrupted scriptures? These are the problems that cause their position to be completely incoherent. Ozzy Abe says, go easy, David. She's just a girl. Oh, we're not talking enough about the prompt now, but the last prompt, she couldn't stay on prompt if she tried. She is dishonest. Oh, she's dishonest, you think? That'd be crazy. Korra's voice is tempting. She should use whiteboard. Yeah, that's the only way to avoid tempting people. Got to use the whiteboard, like Ali Dawa's wife. Not talking enough about the Quran, then Quran about New Testament. Yeah. She keeps going after the Bible. Avery said it best a few days ago. Korra, you really need to get better. He wasn't having any of this like you guys. Lost of missed opportunities. She can talk fast, you see. Yeah, that helps distract people. He surely never forgot Zut, that for sure. Oh, yeah. Muhammad never forgot that. He learnt it from his Christian friend, Sam, crying. That helps. D. Wood, you should host an ortho-Protestant discussion. And hi, Issa. Oh, we will be. We will be, guys. Issa, how religious are American Muslims? It's going to kind of vary from Muslim to Muslim.
I think it varies, and it depends on what you define as religious. Does religious mean you pray all the time? Does it mean you fast all the time? Are we talking about orthodoxic versus orthopraxic? Like, yeah, there's so many different variables, So I think you have a lot of different Muslims, and some are very, practicing. That doesn't mean that they know a lot about these different things. They just have like a kind of a faith. So that's some kind of Muslims, and some of them I think really talk a lot about belief, but I don't, then you see some of these da'is, and they're, I mean, actually, we have to give props to Dr. Malik. He exposed, and I'm surprised that there's this battle with Dr. Malik. He's the one who exposed, all of this kind of horrible behavior that's been going on.
Hats
So I'm
off to
like,
him for that.
it's weird that there's even a conflict with him. You actually propped him up. You're like, dude, thank you for doing this. You're being honest here and doing an expose and revealing this. And I think there are some Muslims like that will say, I believe and I've learned a bunch of Quran, and there's like talk, but there's not really substance. So I think that's the thing. It really just varies across the spectrum and how people believe, how the people read the Quran. It's very different. Like you'll see, like in some of the videos, like with Christian apologists, you'll have some women who aren't even wearing hijab, and they're wearing, different kinds of, like very, modern type clothing. And, they are Muslim, and they don't have that same kind of view as like you need to wear like what Korra is wearing. So I think it just varies.
D. Wood, how much of the Quran do you think was deliberately corrupted by people other than Muhammad, and how much was non-deliberate? Well, you definitely have some deliberate changes. When Aisha says that, they're preparing Muhammad for burial, and then a tame sheep came in and ate parts of the Quran. What were the parts? The verses about breastfeeding adults, and the verse about stoning an adulteress. In other words, verses that were really bothersome and troublesome to women. Those are the ones that conveniently were eaten by a sheep right after Muhammad died. So you have deliberate things like that. I would guess that lots of it is accidental when parts are coming up missing and so on, because people who have them memorized died in battle, or just textual variants and so on. I think that most of it would not be deliberate. What's weird is that Muslims come along later after their textual variants and then just say, yes, these were all revealed by Allah. It was revealed in all these different ways, which is just stupid. We have here, I think Issa is in love. Yeah, I thought the same thing when he's talking about her accent. Do we talk Waraka dying just after blaspheming? Yeah, you could point that out. She mixes just enough truth with lies to create doubt and confusion. In the crucifixion part, the ladies weren't prepared, and she took full advantage. Yeah, I've heard that. That is weird. I mean, Jesus' death by crucifixion is considered one of the best established facts of ancient history, and so I don't know how they wouldn't be prepared for that. Given how well, I guess because you're getting a different group for each person, because I was thinking these ladies seem really well prepared, so I guess because they had a different group of women for each prompt. So maybe that wasn't the A team on that one, but that's just what I've heard. Have Joshua Sijwadi on, or you are Mike Winger? Well, I'm definitely not Mike Winger, so I'll have Joshua Sijwadi done. Is lying and half-truths not a sin in Islam? Not a lot of the time. Issa, Kool-Aid Man Kabeer. Oh, yeah. What? And we have Korra just repping her blood gang affiliation. Red. Oh, yeah. Club Pyru. All right, let's get back to this.
Actually obviously affirms the previous scriptures, and the second Muhammad finds those previous scriptures for the world to see.
Perfect. So what's interesting is you touched upon Surah 6 verse 115, correct? Yes. Surah 6 verse 115 says that Allah's words cannot be changed. What's interesting is if you read that verse in context, verse 114 says that that's talking about the Quran. So 115 says that these words cannot be changed.
So 114.
Whoa, she just lied. She said verse 115 says these words cannot be changed. These words in the Quran cannot be changed. Not what it says. It says there's none who can change Allah's words. Totally different. She just lied about the Quran. What she just did with the Quran is exactly what the Quran accuses Jews and Christians of doing with their scriptures. They twist them with their speech to get the meaning that they want. And it's just amazing. You look at what the Quran actually accuses Jews and Christians of, and they lie about it and say, yep, it's saying you corrupted your text. No, it says we distort it with our speech, but then Muslims will do the exact same thing. And they don't care. She just did it. She just said the Quran says something that it does not say. You catch that, guys? So the verse actually says there's none who can change his words. What does she say? She says, it says there's none. you can't change these words, as in these words in the Quran. Total nonsense.
Muhammad finds those previous scriptures for the world to see.
Perfect. So what's interesting is you touched upon Surah 6, verse 115, correct? Yes. Surah 6, verse 115 says that Allah's words cannot be changed. What's interesting is if you read that verse in context, verse 114 says that that's talking about the Quran. So 115 says that these words cannot be changed.
These words cannot be changed, liar.
Suggesting that the previous revelations were not God's words?
No, I believe that the previous revelations were God's words.
Does the Quran confirm that the previous revelations are God's words? I just want to know.
Yeah, wait, hold on.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna say yes.
The previous scriptures are God's words. However, Allah does not promise to preserve the previous scriptures. Why? Because they're not meant for us.
That's
Very
what was
convenient.
preserved.
That's so
Whoa.
You see
that makes no sense. What you just said.
Allah doesn't promise to preserve the previous scriptures. The verse that she just lied about says there is none who can change his words, and she just sat. I mean, guys, what did she just say? Yes, I believe the previous revelations are Allah's words, but he doesn't promise to protect them because they're not for us. What does his actual verse say? There is none who can change his words, not his words in the Quran, not these words that we're talking about right now. There is none who can change his words. She admitted that the Torah and the gospel are, according to the Quran, the words of Allah, and she says, and they were changed. So, is this statement, Korra, is the statement, there is none who can change his words, true, according to you? No, it's false. His words have been repeatedly changed. So that is a lie in the Quran. The Quran is a book of lies, according to Korra. Oopsie. And so we're changing our name to Korra Bid'ah Master. Bid'ah. That's the sin of innovation, guys.
No, that's okay. That's a problem with that. Can I ask what was preserved?
No.
Like, so only let me concede this. Okay, so some of it was preserved, some of it wasn't, right? So can you list some things that were preserved? For example, the stories of the prophets.
Yeah, you can say the aspects of the stories of the prophets because we believe in something within Islam, and it's also quite interesting because this is
aspects of it, so not all of it.
Yeah, aspects.
That's actually incorrect according to the Quran. Can I tell you?
No. According to the Quran, it actually says explicitly, right? It says that these previous scriptures were altered in some ways. It says in Surah 5, verses 13 through 15, it speaks about.
We already checked out that passage.
Children of Israel changing the words around. So it's not talking about necessarily.
Is it talking about?
Yeah, and explains how. And sounds like she's going to go. I haven't seen this part of this discussion, guys, but yeah. What is it talking about? Is it talking about doing it with their speech, as the Quran says? That's what the Quran actually says. Or is it talking about corrupting the text so that the text is corrupted?
Textual corruption?
It's talking about corruption vaguely, so it doesn't specify textual nor verbal.
Perfectly
Hey, matter of fact, hats off to Korra for saying. She says it doesn't specify. It's just corruption. So she says it's vaguely. Right. So if you're, in other words, it's ambiguous. If it says the Jews and the Christians are distorting their scriptures, what does that mean? Does it mean they're changing the text, or they're distorting them when they talk about what's in the text? All you have to do is keep reading. The rest of the chapter is Allah ordering them to stop distorting their scriptures, to stop avoiding them, and to actually judge by them. So Korra just baked herself with a moment of honesty.
Another...
not perfectly. We have very good...
Not perfectly, okay.
We have very good Torahs that are preserved from way before that. And so if a group of Jews... Actually, Ibn Kathir even says this with 2 verse 78, where there was a group of Jews who knowingly corrupt the scripture, right? And so if you know the truth, how do they know the truth? The text has to be there. So
the text was within the time of Moses, right? Because
verbally...
no, not by necessity. Because the Quran specifies that the Torah was entrusted to a group of individuals to preserve. The Quran specifies that.
It was Moses,
entrusted,
and then it was also entrusted to John the Baptist.
The Quran says...
the first century.
We're talking about what the Quran says. The reason why, and I want to tie it back to what we were talking about, which is consistency and confirmation, right? Because she said that the Quran confirms the previous scriptures, and the Quran says that Allah's words are not changed. The verse that she brought specifies, which
I don't
means
need that verse.
that in Allah...
I wouldn't use that verse for my argument.
Yeah, I'm just addressing it because I didn't get to it fully before you jumped in. So, Surah 6, verses 115, when it says God's word, and this is going to tie into what you said because we're talking about corruption now, and whether or not God's word can be changed, God's word in this instance is not unrestricted. It is speaking specifically to the Quran and about the Quran. It's not speaking about the previous scriptures, because even if, in some hypothetical instance, if we had the entirety of the Torah and the Injil with us in our laps, it would have been abrogated. It wouldn't have been binding upon us. But just to...
Why would Allah be telling Jews and Christians to judge by it. It's been abrogated. Why is he telling us to judge by it? And again, her interpretation of 6:115 makes no sense. Allah says, there is none who can change his words. Oh, that just means his words in the Quran. He doesn't say just his words in the Quran. You trust the Quran because no one can change his words. That's how you know he's going to preserve his book. But guess what? If none can change his words, then guess what? No one can change his words in the Torah. No one can change his words in the Bible. No one can change his words, period. Can't be done. He's too powerful. And then they come along, no, Allah tried real hard, but, people just came around and slapped it around. And then Allah didn't even realize that it's been corrupted because he keeps telling Jews and Christians that they have to judge by it. Weird God.
On your point, because
what does confirmation mean? Could you just define?
Yeah, confirmation means that you can say that it has divine origins. Now,
what's the Arabic word for confirmation?
What do you mean?
Like when it says it comes to confirm the previous scriptures?
Musaddiqan.
Sorry? Okay, so in 12:111, it's a
guys, you hear this? We just brought it up, and she's doing it again. What does the Quran condemn Jews and Christians for doing? Distorting the scriptures with their speech. The Quran says over and over and over again that it's confirming the Torah and the gospel that are with the Jews and Christians. Says it over and over and over again. Confirming what is with you, confirming what is with you, confirming what is with you. She says when the Quran says it's confirming, it means it's only confirming that it has a divine origin, not that you can trust what you actually have with you. She's a compulsive liar. This is dawah, guys. This is dawah. This is sad and pathetic and a joke.
What do you mean?
Like when it says it comes to confirm the previous scriptures?
Musaddiqan.
Sorry? Okay, so in 12:111, it's a different one. It's taskida. I'm probably butchering the...
It's variations of the same word.
Taskida?
Yeah, it's variations of the same
word. Okay, what was the other
one? It's in Surah 3:3. It's in, for example, Surah 5, and it goes on.
Okay, I got you.
Confirmation doesn't mean that you say that every single word in a specific scripture is preserved, because we as Muslims
Yes, it does, because Allah specifically says it. He says in Surah 2, verse 85, do you then believe in part of the book and not in other parts? What is the recompense of those who do so but disgrace in the life of this world? And on the day of resurrection, they shall be consigned to the most severe punishment. Allah says, if you only believe in parts of your book and not in all of it, he will punish you in this life and then send you to hell. What's Korra saying? Oh yeah, the Quran's just confirming parts. I don't even know what to do here. It's like they do not care even slightly about what their book says. It's just, here's the dawah script. Here's what I've been told from dawah guys. Now let me go and say that. And who cares what Allah says? Even if it's the exact opposite of what I'm saying. And they are guilty of the exact same thing the Quran condemns Jews and Christians for doing. And they think they're fine, and they're devout Muslims. This is wild, man.
I have heard this verse before. Believe that although your revelations have been corrupted in some way, which you also agree with, you believe that there are instances where there are things that were changed later.
Yeah, I know your stance.
We believe in something called general confirmation.
Very good. So I'm trying to press here. You said general, right? So not all of it. Maybe prophecies of Muhammad.
What we have today is generally confirmed.
Some of the stories of the prophets. But I want to bring up 2 verse 252, okay? This is talking about stories of the prophets again. So, for example, Saul, right? Because you believe Saul was a prophet. And so what happened from 246 to 252, it talks about Saul's story. It says that Saul and his army charged at Goliath. It also said that he tested his army with a river, saying, if you drink from your hands, you're with me. If you're not. And then it also says that the sign of his kingship was that the Ark of the Covenant would come to him. If anyone has read the Old Testament from anywhere in the world, in any language, they would know that those three things are completely divergent from what the Torah says. And then Imam al-Razi and Ibn Kathir, they have a commentary on 2 verse 52, which says, these revelations are revealed by Allah, and you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are truly, well, it doesn't say truly, are a messenger. And so the commentary on that verse says, and they're coming in the 13th century, by the way, Ibn Kathir says, this story conforms to the exact manner at which they still have in their books today. That's what Ibn Kathir says. Okay. Imam al-Razi says there are no differences in this. He says there's no differences. And so even your scholars think that during the time of Muhammad and even in the 13th centuries, that the Old Testament stories from both books should be the same. That's what Ibn Kathir says. That's what Imam al-Razi says. You can go look. I'm not going to deceive you. Your soul's on the line. Okay, I've read the tafsirs in Arabic as well. I don't read Arabic, but I've confirmed it. And so I just want to say that to you. And then I'll just add this last point. The miracle of the Quran, according to you guys, is that Muhammad is illiterate, but he gets all the details correct. And we see that all over the place. And so he gets thousands and thousands of details irreconcilably incorrect in the stories of the prophets.
Over and over.
And I, as a Christian, I can never come and say he is from God.
Wow, 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 wow. All right, guys. Pretty wild stuff. She cooked her there. Cooked her. Hey, you're muted, Issa. Who are you talking to?
Oh, sorry, I was talking to you. I was saying that I can see why they brought up Korra as the woman defending Islam, because clearly she kind of knows these kind of materials more than her colleagues did, if you know what I mean.
No, she's here's what's weird. She's light years ahead of like some of the Dawa guys, some of the Dawa bros. She's light years ahead. I mean, she's bringing up these things. She's wrong. But the only points that she was actually able, that would even sound to someone who doesn't know what's going on, sound like she was making some reasonable point, or people who aren't familiar with the sources. As soon as you go to these sources, what did she say? Guys, does anyone see a reason to believe that the Quran is the word of Allah in there? That was the topic. Let me do a poll real quick. Let me do a poll. You can talk, Issa. Go ahead and talk while I write this poll.
Sure. It was shockingly bad that she was really not prepared, and she interrupted her interlocutor, so she doesn't have good decorum, which I think is problematic when you're trying to showcase your points. Like, for example, the woman with the French accent was like, or it sounds kind of Frenchish. We could say the wonderful accent, let's put it that way, just in case. The woman was making a point. She was like interrupting her and not even allowing her to express what her point was. That's not, you don't, over talking your colleague is not, it's like, do these people even know how to debate? Like, remember when we debated each other? We never interrupted each other. We never talked over each other. We never disrespected each other. And I'm like, a lot of these Muslim debaters, they really are very disrespectful. They don't like listen. They don't wait. They don't say, let me hear your point. It's like, no. If I overtalk you and I sound smart, that means I am smart. And it's like, are you just trying to appeal to a crowd? Because you're not convincing anyone. And I don't feel Korra was very witty either. And I think the woman with the wonderful accent put on a point where it's like she was deflecting from the point. She wasn't engaging the argument. And I think if you're going to debate, you need to engage the arguments. And I think this is the tactic I've seen with Daniel Hakikachi too. It's a very I'm learning this kind of this particular debate style, and it's basically being extremely aggressive, being very hostile, but really not. It's like being what I would call a paper tiger or a glass cannon. It's like you hit hard, but when you get hit, you crumple. You know, they're not good defenders. They don't know how to defend themselves.
No, they don't.
All they do is they will hit really hard, say really rough things, and if you're not prepared, you just get blown out. It's like a one-hit KO. That's their goal, is to try to get the one-hit KO and then escape, because when they get punched back, they collapse. You know, they're like Glass Joe from Mike Tyson, right?
Mike Tyson, punch out, man.
They get punched out in one hit. So it's like, that's what I felt here. I was like, she's not prepared for this. And every single argument and basically all she tried to do was attack Christianity. And I'm like, every time you attack Christianity, you attack Islam. And that's what the Christian woman brought up, is that they're like, you're actually attacking Islam. And she is. And she's like, well, you know, it's generally confirmed. I don't know what that even means. Like, it's just like a fancy term to say, well, yeah, we have this issue that we need to say that these scriptures are from God. So, well, I'm going to say this really generic, vague thing, and overall that is confirmed. And I'm like, well, I could say, you know, the Quran affirms Harry Potter. it generally confirms Harry Potter. It's saying, you help the poor, and help the orphans, right? Here, I'm going to do something witty here. Help the poor and help the orphans. You need to help Harry Potter because he's a poor and he's an orphan. Whoa, the Quran generally confirms Harry Potter. There you go. That's her general confirmation,
Mm-hmm. Yep. And as far as the general confirmation, that's based on their. It became kind of popular, but it's based on a complete misreading of Ibn Kathir. Jai and DOC have pointed this out, but they found in Ibn Kathir that it's confirming generally, and they say, oh yeah, just in general. So there could be a bunch of stuff that's wrong in there, but in general, the gist, it's confirming. But that's not what it means. That's not what the general confirmation means. That's to distinguish from the way it's used is you have a general belief in something, and you have the detailed belief. The details where you actually know the details, right? So if you don't know the details, you're not competent to speak on something, you say, we confirm it in general, meaning I don't know all the details. I can explain it to you, but in general, I just confirm it. I confirm it because it's so you would say the exact same thing about the Quran. If you're a Muslim, if you convert to Islam and you don't know a lot of detail about what the Quran is, as a Muslim, you're supposed to say you confirm it in general. I can't talk about the specifics or the details, but in general, I confirm it. That means I'm just confirming that it's all from God. And so Ibn Kathir uses this about the previous scriptures, and they say, "Oh, it's just confirming that, like the general gist of it." And he's like, "No, that's not how this word is used. It's saying even if you're a Muslim who doesn't know what's in them, you confirm them in general. You confirm them in general, even though you don't know the details of what's in there. You still know it's from Allah." So they completely distort that, and then they run with it. Dawah is absolutely deception. No way around it. No way around it. All right, take these last couple super chats. Maybe Allah meant that Uthman was a nun when the Quran said, none can change the words of Allah. Future skit. Oh, yeah. I'm screenshotting that. Everyone get that? So none can change the words of Allah, but Uthman can. So it's actually telling you that Uthman was a nun. Then we have, we believe in Islam. We believe in Islam. I love these Islam special rules that are specific to Islam. Yet Islam is supposed to finalize all prior. What a mess. Yeah, it is. We believe this. We believe that. We believe this. Even though it's the opposite of what our scriptures say. But this is what we believe. None can change his words except a tame sheep. That's right. Allah couldn't protect his words from a sheep. But he promises to protect his words, but just can't do it from a sheep. All right, guys. So you got the poll there. We're going to go ahead and close out now. Just checking on the vote. So I said, did Korra present a powerful case that the Quran is God's final revelation? And we had 2%. 2% said yes. 98% said no. So it's good to know that we've got 2% of the people watching are Korra's fans who came over, and maybe Korra. Doesn't work, though. Doesn't work. All right, last one here. Why would you defend something you need to lie for? That's what I seriously wonder that, right? Like, they know that, and this was like Ali Dawah, when he came out and said the scientific miracles argument has been debunked. And then he said the reason he became a Muslim was because of the scientific miracles argument. It's like, okay, well, why do you still believe that this is true? Why are you still defending this? And I have no clue. I as far as their actual reasons for thinking that this is true, I have no idea what they think shows that their religion is true. Because whenever we ask them to show why their religion is true, they lie. And so if you don't believe that you have actual evidence that you can put forward honestly, with integrity, and as soon as someone asks you why you believe something, you have to start lying. Like, why do you believe in this religion? Do you have one single actual reason that you think is good and should be compelling to others? If so, what is it? Because every time we ask you, you guys make things up. It's creepy, weird stuff. And finally, we have Korra's poor mask. She pronounces her T's so hard that it has to be soaked. Perfect. 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 And then we have, hey, random question. Have you seen Wise Disciples' video on the debate with Andrew Wilson? If so, what are your thoughts? Very cool channel. Oh yeah, Wise Disciple, good channel. No, I haven't watched it. I'm not interested in the sort of recaps of really weird discussions with Andrew Wilson. But no, I'm sure it's good. I'm just not terribly interested. All right, everyone. Tomorrow, Lord willing, I will be on here with Tony Costa. Hardcore Protestant, and he's going to share his thoughts on Eastern Orthodoxy. Then later on, we're gonna get some proponents of Eastern Orthodoxy to lay out their positive case. Trying to get one of the priests who was recommended by the Eastern Orthodox guys. In other words, I asked the Eastern Orthodox Christians on X, hey, who do you think would be able to lay out a positive case for Eastern Orthodoxy being the true church? They recommended people, and so I'm going to see who I can get on, but that should be cool, and we will. This will all be settled once and for all, ladies and gentlemen, once and for all. All right, Issa, any closing thoughts before I cut out here?
I think there needs to be better Islamic apologetics. These are just, it's kind of tragic.
What if it doesn't exist, man?
There's got to be something better than this. I mean, Shabir Ali would have done better than this. You know what I mean? I think, Shabir's only case now for Islam, I mean, like recently was like mathematical miracles and stuff like that, and that doesn't work much either. So I don't know. I seriously have no clue why they think we should believe in Islam, and they can't even use the main argument of the Quran. The main argument of the Quran, Allah says, "Hey, I'm affirming your scriptures. Why don't you affirm Muhammad?" And they can't even use that. They can't even use Allah's main argument for us. It's really wild. Yeah.
And finally, it's less of a recap and more of just a good reminder, at least for me. Oh, always good to have good reminders. All right, everyone. I'll catch you all tomorrow. If you're interested in a discussion about Eastern Orthodoxy, we're going to have it. All right. Catch you all then.